I'll be real. Uh, I can't even remember what happened last time. I know there was hurt.
So,
I was complaining.
since Dark Xana is always here first, I might as well tell this story now. So, yesterday I beat Ocarina of Time on my stream, and then I went and I set up Majora's Mask 3D to run on an emulator, like, and we played like, I don't know, 20 minutes of that, and oh shit, sound is muted. No, sound isn't muted. No, sound should be good, Dark Xana. I mean, I'm looking at my levels and nothing seems wrong.
Interesting.
Moderator verified Streamlabs professional stream.
Oh my god.
But so one of the button toggles in Majora's Mask is a target lock, so it lets you focus on an object or an enemy. I don't know. Oh, so because of how the emulator toggles inputs, if I click on one of the triggers on my controller, the entire length of the analog input on the trigger is button, or is axis 2 minus. So any position, even all the way open on the trigger, registers a button press, which keeps you perpetually locked in the target lock. I managed to fix it today. Now I just got to figure out how to solve the frame drops, which it seems like an emulator thing. Less than a. Oh my gosh. My computer's not powerful enough to run this. So how is everybody today? Flower? Wavy?
Living the dream.
Nick? Dark Xana?
I
Got a cat that's annoying me.
I want to see the kitty.
Not today.
Send me pictures.
Maybe later.
not
I should get the Windows share going. I'm doing good.
Yeah, that would definitely help.
I'm doing good. Today is a good day. So, am I the asshole for getting a call from my mom trying to guilt trip me into helping my uncle on an emergency when I'm already doing stuff that's important to me? Well, Dark Xana, your opinion here is doesn't matter because you always want people to suffer.
If you're busy, you're busy.
Not very hard to tell. Plus, we've been doing this for almost 8 months. I think we actually just passed 7 months of rewatch streams. So we're almost to 8. 8 will be I think the week after the 17th. Yeah. 8 weeks would be Friday the 18th.
Wow.
Of December.
Can't believe it.
Other flowers like so Wazy's internet is dead. He's on data right now.
Yeah.
So Flower is you're banned. Get out of here. You're banned. Get out, Cam. I told you this last night. Get out of
You
here.
can't ban me. You can't ban me. I'm waiting.
Cameron, believe it.
Thank you. I was waiting.
he just left.
Discord crashed.
What crashed his Discord? Beautiful.
I was spamming the VC button.
I don't know if he realizes I'm not gonna move him because that's ineffective now.
Except it's not. He's not from America. He's not in America right now.
Wazy's in Africa, Dark Xana.
Yep. Living the dream.
So Cam, I wouldn't recommend server muting me because I'm the one who has to listen to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just spitting in the face of all the viewers when you do that.
Oh, that's all good.
Also, you
It's
have
all
an
good.
echo.
Yeah, that
Can't believe Cameron.
The stream wasn't. Yeah, I just turned the stream on. It wasn't muted. I muted
Can't
it
believe
as soon as it came
Cameron
on.
is
One
willing
of the
to
colonies.
sacrifice
What does it actually? No,
all of the viewers.
no. At least not a British colony or a post-British colony. Wazy, do you know your historical colonizer imperialist?
Oh, that would be the British.
Oh, it was the
That would be
British?
the British. Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
Hey.
Fuck is this?
Yeah.
Never mind. You might as well be America at that point then.
The Zambians would very much disagree with you. But hey.
Well, I think they disagree for more than one reason.
Well, yeah.
More than one very obvious reason. Yeah,
Oh my
Flower
God.
is our resident stenographer for today.
I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I was so confused.
All right,
Okay.
well,
So that way I can read and respond to everything all you lovely people say. So even
Well,
with my awful day.
except you're not going to read anything, Wazy, and or at
Damn,
least you're
that's-
not going to respond because
that's
it's
a lot of
time
work.
to mute up.
Ah man, this is it. Here we go.
Anything you type in the voice chat, I'll relay over to the Twitch chat.
Spam.
Oh,
Everybody spam.
Here we are going far to mute everyone's mics. Cam, I don't see that muted button next to yours.
Oh, we're starting now? Okay.
Here we
Chapter 7 The Grand Alliance. Alita put on the headset while Jeremy helped the professor. They were in the chemistry lab and everything was ready for the video conference. Walter, Ulrich, Richard, and Eva were seated at the students' benches, at the back of the monitor, so as not to be seen by Dito. Alita and Hertz were sitting side by side at the teacher's desk. Jeremy and Alita had come prepared down to the last detail. They had checked that the Green Phoenix had no spy camera or microphone in the laboratory, and had then installed a cryptographic program onto the computer. Hertz and Alita both had a microphone to talk to Dito, while the others could hear their dialogue thanks to speakers. It's Thursday, 1 o'clock in the morning, Jeremy commented, looking at his watch. So in Washington it must be 7 in the afternoon, Wednesday, Alita concluded. Ulrich scratched his head, not really understanding. We've already studied time zones, Ulrich, the professor groaned. You should know how they work. The boy went as red as a tomato, and Jeremy took advantage of the pause to complete the final adjustments on the computer. We're ready, he said. Let's hope that Dito is already in her office. 3, 2, 1, call started. Alita concentrated on the blank screen. After several instants, the image of a woman appeared. She was around Hertz's age, with blonde hair and fine lips. Good morning, Dito, the professor coldly greeted. We are here with Walter Stern, who has explained to us how to get in contact with you. I'm also very pleased to see you again, Major Steinbeck, the woman said with a smile. How long has it been since we last met? 11 years? And that girl with you must be Harper's daughter. Strange that she's still young. She should be over 20 years old by now. Alita lowered her eyes, intimidated, but Hertz immediately intervened. We need to talk about some very serious matters, she said dryly. The professor quickly brought Dito up to speed with recent events, up until the father-son meeting at the Hermitage and the invasion of the factory by Mago's men. These children, she finally said, have proved themselves. They discovered Lyoko and fought Xana all by themselves. But now this is different. We need your help against the terrorists. Are you thinking of military intervention? The Parisian region has too many citizens. It could be complicated. No soldiers, Alita interrupted, leaning towards the screen. We want a peaceful solution. Listen, ma'am. My friends and I know the virtual worlds by heart, and we're convinced that it's possible to stop the Green Phoenix through Lyoko. But to succeed, we'll need your cooperation. Walter's appearance in the Hermitage damaged the access scanner, blocking 2 of our friends in an isolated digital environment, my father's journal. We can't use the scanners at the factory, as they're currently out of reach, and let's not even think about the trinkets in Brussels. They're much too old for... Ah, yes, Brussels. You do realize you trespassed on government property, right, children? You could end up in prison. What we want, Alita continued, not allowing herself to be intimidated, is access to the information about the connection to the First City. That way, we can connect ourselves directly to the replica, then the scanners, which we intend to build, without needing to go to Brussels. That won't be a problem, Dito nodded. What else? Alita smiled. Professor Hertz here has a dossier full of codes that we haven't managed to decipher. The professor jumped in her seat, but Alita continued without pausing. If we find out what they're for... I know what the codes are for, Hertz interrupted. Waldo and I prepared them together not long ago. It's the code down, the definitive weapon to destroy Lyoko and the First City once and for all. At that moment, Eva Skinner leapt up and ran out of the laboratory. The girl began to move through the deserted hallway in huge strides. Walk to calm down, another human habit. She really had to do something to resolve this delicate situation. At that moment, Xana hated himself for not succeeding in possessing Professor Hertz. So these mysterious codes were to create a weapon capable of destroying Lyoko. In behaving like this, he ran the risk of being discovered, but he couldn't contain his rage. Destroying the virtual world meant destroying him as well, and he could not allow that. The children then came out of the laboratory. Jeremy and Alita were holding hands and smiling. I'm sorry if I interrupted you, Eva said, lowering her head. I didn't want to bother you, but it's just that I needed to go to the bathroom. No problem, Alita responded. The negotiations went very well. Dito was ready to give us a hand. As long as the Green Phoenix are in town, we'll be allied with the Men in Black. That's correct, Jeremy added. Now, I also have the access codes to the First City. As soon as we build a new scanner, you can go there and get Yumi and Odd out of the mirror. And the code down? Eva asked. Hertz exited the laboratory adjusting her lab coat. She seemed very exhausted. It's a long story, kids, she commented. We'll talk about it tomorrow. For the moment, it's time for bed. Everyone considered this a good idea, and Eva was forced to give in. She had to wait longer. Plus, the prospect of entering the First City was more than sufficient to guarantee her a good night's sleep. But you don't sleep. You're an artificial intelligence, Xana said to himself. It was strange that, from time to time, he had to remind himself of something so basic. Professor Hopper was in the Hermitage's attic. In reality, Yumi was also there in a corner, hidden there with Odd, still unconscious, but the man couldn't see them anyway. The mirror had brought the girl further forward in time, and now she found herself on the 3rd of June, 1994. It was the afternoon, and the warm lights of summer entered through the window. The attic was jam-packed with books and papers. Hopper was hunched over a large desk, scrawling notes and grumbling to himself. At a certain point, he stood up and violently slammed his palm into the table. It doesn't work, he cried. The code down is still incomplete. Too many variables are getting away from me. He began to pace back and forth across the attic. He arrived at the window from which Kedik Academy's park could be seen, and then retraced his steps to almost trample Yumi seated on the floor, head between her knees. I need space on my disk to register the backup. Too much space, darn it! Where am I going to find such a powerful memory system? It would need to be able to conserve my data for a very long time. The professor started to walk again. Yumi turned her gaze from him to study the navigation system control box. She had escaped Xana's claws for the moment, but she wasn't sure that she was totally safe. Maybe Xana really was able to use Lyoko inside the mirror to enter the Lyoko of the present. What had he said about the box? It was an interface that allowed one to interact with the virtual world, and all he had needed was the power of his own thoughts in order to directly use machines. Yumi knew that she had to warn the others, to get back in contact with reality, but she didn't know how to do it. She pressed her ear as if she were wearing an earpiece that didn't really exist. Jeremy, she murmured. Can you hear me? Anyone? I'm here, Lita's voice responded. Yumi leapt to her feet, looking all around her like mad, and saw her friend enter the attic. She was dressed in her usual dungarees. her hair cut short and wearing a magnificent smile on her face. Yumi ran towards her, brimming with happiness, and wrapped her arms around her. It was like trying to grab air. She passed straight through her, lost her balance, and fell to the floor. She whipped around and saw the girl greet her father by kissing him on the cheek. Oh no, it wasn't the real Aelita. It was just a recording in the mirror, just like Hopper. "Is everything going well, Daddy?" the young girl asked. "No, not at all. There's a problem in my program that I can't isolate. What's more, I have disk space problems and—" "Can you tell me what's going on?" Aelita interrupted, observing him. "Susan told me that Walter fired everyone. The Ishiyamas, Robert De La Robbia, Michael." All of a sudden, Yumi was paying strict attention. Did she say Ishiyama? Was Aelita talking about her parents? "You need to trust me, my dear." "Oh, that goes without saying. But aside from that, can I help you with anything?" Hopper observed her intensely. "Perhaps you can, but I don't know if it's a good idea. I mean, I don't know what kind of effect it will have on you." Aelita gave him another kiss. "If you need me, you can count on me, Daddy, no matter the cost." "Okay, maybe it can work," Hopper said with a smile. Jeremy cleaned his greasy hands by briskly rubbing them against his jeans and placed the screwdriver on the floor. He and Professor Hopper were in the secret room in the Hermitage. They had got up very early in the morning and had come to the chalet together to immediately set to work on the scanner. It was a Thursday and Jeremy needed to be in class, but Hertz had spoken to the principal, so he and his friends had been excused from classes for 2 days with the excuse of helping the professor organize the science textbooks in the laboratory. The teen got out of the column and the professor gave him a glass of cold tea that he downed in one gulp. He wasn't used to physical work and was drenched in sweat. He had changed the fuses, but it hadn't been enough. Something mechanical had broken in the arm of the transformer, and, as if that wasn't enough, the motherboard had been toasted. When the current spiked, the scanner was just working at full power, and the unexpected interruption had destroyed a delicate component. Hertz attentively listened to his technical explanations, and Jeremy smiled. It was very nice to be able to talk to the professor on equal terms. He finally faced someone who truly understood the technological problems he normally had to resolve alone. "Maybe with the right equipment I could repair the arm," he finally added. "But not the motherboard," Hertz completed his sentence for him. "We need to replace it completely." "If we can reach the old factory on the island, I could possibly find some replacement pieces Hopper abandoned there, but with the Green Phoenix terrorists around, it's much too dangerous. Anna and Yumi run the risk of being imprisoned in the mirror forever. Unless," the professor began to say as her mouth curled into a cunning smile, "we go to see the creators of the scanner directly." "Exactly. It's a shame Professor Hopper isn't here with us. If he were, the problem would be solved by now." "Jeremy Belpaw, may I remind you that I am your teacher? You need to trust me. And what's more, I never said that Hopper was the one who constructed the logic circuits in the scanners." "If that's the case, then who did? You?" "No, someone you know very well, your father, with Mr. Ishiyama. We could get them here and then use my memory snatching machine to give them their memories back." Ulrich opened his eyes and, for a moment, had the impression of not having slept at all. He looked around him, disoriented. He was still in his room in the Caddick dormitories. On the other hand, Odd wasn't the one in the bed opposite him, but rather an adult man still dressed in suit and tie. His father. After the conversation with Dido, they were all too tired to think about another solution, so Hertz suggested that he sleep in the dormitories with his son. Ulrich shook his head. A traitor and the son of a traitor. What a great duo. The teen got out of bed, slipped his feet into a pair of slippers, and glanced at the alarm clock. It was already 10 o'clock in the morning. He hadn't even heard the bell signaling students to go to class. He decided he should go see if Jeremy and the others were already up. "Son," Walter murmured. "Yes?" "You're already up?" "I'm hungry. It's past breakfast time." His father sat up on the bed. His dark suit had been completely crinkled during the night, and a short and shaggy beard had appeared on the man's cheeks. "I'm sorry." "Why are you telling me you're sorry?" Ulrich rattled, giving him a perplexed look. "For what I did to you, you and your mother. I don't know if I've ever been a good father, and I'm sorry for that. "Come on," the young boy interrupted, forcing a smile. "It's not that bad." "That's not true, but I want to tell you that I'm very angry at myself. I played a very dangerous game and I lost everything. I had the opportunity to change my life after they erased my memory, compensate in some way for what I had done, and instead of that I continued to open the old wounds of my errors. During all that time I distanced you from me without listening or really talking to you. I was even close to losing your mother's love. But when I saw you in the Hermitage yesterday, I finally understood everything. I feel that I've changed, and now I can make up for all the bad I've caused, being with you and helping Aelita." Walter stopped, and for the first time since he had begun speaking, he looked Ulrich in the eyes. Ulrich tried to smile back. What do you say? Are you willing to give me another chance? The young man approached him, holding out his hand. We have a lot to work on, and it will be very dangerous. We're really going to need you to make it out of all of this. Father and son exchanged a strong handshake. Do you have a moment? Jeremy asked. Alita was in Professor Hertz's office. She retrieved the dossier of codes that they hadn't yet managed to make sense of and, perched on a tower of magazines, was contemplating the sheaf of papers in her hands without blinking. She didn't even raise her head to greet Jeremy when he sat beside her. He happily explained to her that Hertz telephoned everyone's parents. Given that Jeremy's lived in a city far away, the meeting would take place the following day. When they arrive, the professor will bring back their memories and put them to work together on the scanner. At first, the principal had some objections, especially about the idea of giving the children 2 days of holiday, but in the end, Hertz managed to win him over. Yumi and Odd were still prisoners in the virtual world, and they had a lot of work ahead of them. We've almost done it, Jeremy concluded, giving his friend a warm smile. Soon, you'll also be able to enter the mirror. Alita seemed pensive, completely absorbed in the papers. Hey, are you listening? I still can't understand it, the girl murmured. This program, it's incomplete. That's why Hertz never used it until now. It's missing some chunks. Jeremy leaned in to look at the pages. Indeed, Alita could have been right, but to be sure, they had to thoroughly study these pages and do some simulations on the computer. Well, he said, it seems obvious that it's missing some parts. We also have to take Richard's palm computer into account, and there's also the mirror as well, and the first city. It's likely that your father dispersed several fragments of the program throughout the various virtual worlds. Alita shook her head. She picked up another sheaf of papers from the floor. Here, Richard printed me the codes that appeared on this palm computer. If you look at them carefully, you can see that they have nothing to do with the code down. It's like a completely different program. The girl smiled. There was something more. In my memories, I had a sort of flashback, a fragment in which I seemed to be in the hermitage with my father, and he asked me to help him do something important. But I can't remember what it was. Well, Jeremy consoled her, I wouldn't worry about that if I were you. Since you lost your memory during the Christmas holidays, your memories have been a confused mess, but you reclaim more each day that passes. This is different, Alita retorted, shaking her head, even if I can't remember why. Chapter 8. Soldiers in the Virtual World. The first underground floor of the factory housed the control system of the supercomputer. Hannibal Mago entered the broad room, illuminated by a greenish light which came directly from the walls. At the center, there was a circular platform that a mess of mechanical arms and electrical cables hung from. Between the platform and the devices overhead floated a sphere that seemed similar to a small planet divided into 4 differently colored sections. At the center of the sphere shone a very vivid, white-colored core. Mago stopped to admire this nearly transparent world that was suspended in air. That's Lyoko, then? He asked. Memory sat in a very comfortable chair that had a series of buttons on the arms, pivoting a short distance from the platform and surrounded by an imposing console composed of buttons, screens, and levers. The woman was busy with the computer commands, but she turned as soon as she heard her boss's voice. Yes, it's a projection of Lyoko. From here, I can control all of Lyoko, manage its towers, and, especially, see where our men are located. Mago approached her and started to study the hologram of Lyoko. One of its quarters, the one in green, had a bright rectangular label superimposed over it, on which 3-dimensional letters read, Lyoko Forest. On the surface of the green quarter were 3 red immobile icons. Memory pointed at them. These 3 icons here indicate the position of our unit. And why aren't they moving? Asked the man with a wary voice. I haven't the slightest idea, Memory admitted. There should be a way to communicate with them, but perhaps I haven't yet figured out how to activate this microphone. I tried to talk to them, but they didn't hear me. Zoom in, Mago said. I can do even better. The woman's fingers began to hammer at the keyboard. One of the monitors went dark, then lit up again, showing a new image. It appeared to be a scene from a video game. The sky was a shade of light blue, although there were no sun or clouds to be seen. The ground was solid, flat and green, which was supposed to resemble grass in theory, and there were several tall trees with narrow trunks. They were possibly birch trees, but the trunks were too straight and smooth, and they rose so high into the sky that their tops could not be seen. There was no such tree in the real world. It's a static image? Mago asked. No, it's a video. It shows exactly what... Memory glanced at another screen. The soldier Callum is seeing. But they aren't moving. Why? I was convinced that the lack of audio was to blame, said the woman, shrugging her shoulders, that they were waiting for our orders. No one can remain still for this long. They haven't even turned their heads. Bring them in immediately. Something must have happened to them. Memory obeyed. The attic of the Hermitage began to grow dark. Orange evening light entered through the windows as the sun set. It was the sunset of the 3rd of June, 1994, to be precise. Yumi sighed. How many hours had she been trapped in the mirror? Hopper and Aelita, or rather their recordings, had been away from the attic for a very long time, but she had decided not to follow them. Discovering the content of the professor's journal didn't interest her anymore. She only wanted to go back home to warn the others that Xana was alive. At the young girl's feet, Odd was still asleep on his side with his mouth hanging open, his chest barely moving. "Can't you wake up?" Yumi whispered to him softly, touching his shoulder. "You don't know how much I need you." She waited a moment, and then nothing happened. She shook him with all her might. "Wake up, Odd, please. I'm serious." "Huh?" responded the boy, opening one eye, then the other. He sensitively placed his head between his hands, as if he feared that it might explode. "Feel like a steamroller ran over my—" He couldn't finish his sentence. Yumi fell to her knees and gave him a bear hug. Tears of joy fell down her cheeks. She was no longer alone. "Hey, not so tight," muttered Odd. "You're suffocating me." The boy sat up straight and looked all around himself with curiosity. "Where are we? At the Hermitage? It's really hot for January." Actually, it's June. The 3rd of June, 1994. Whoa, that's crazy! Mad scientist Jeremy managed to build a time travel machine like in that movie, Back to the Future? If he used a car, I hope he used the right race car, like a Ferrari or a Porsche or... Yumi burst out laughing and placed a hand on his mouth to keep him quiet. This was truly the Odd she'd always known. He never missed the chance to crack a joke. The young girl filled him in on the situation, telling him about the mirror and the discoveries that she had made about Hopper and Aelita's past. And then she told him about the most terrible discovery of them all, Xana. "I remember now! Eva Skinner!" Odd burst out, somehow managing to stay silent up until then. "I went to go see her at her house, and she was Xana. She kissed me, and everything became muddled after that." "Eva? Xana's possessed her too? Then we have a really big problem. It's been at least a day since I last managed to contact Jeremy. We can't even warn him of the danger." "You'll see, they can take care of themselves," Odd assured her with a smile. "I'm more worried about something else. I didn't fully explain myself. I went to see Eva because I found a strange memory card. The man with the dogs dropped it when he attacked my father. It had a video saved on it showing Aelita's mother. She was tied to a chair being held prisoner." "I don't know what to think anymore. You want to know something else strange? Your father and my parents. Hopper knew them. I heard him talking about them with Aelita several hours ago. Well, several hours ago in the June of 1994. How can that be?" There were more mysterious elements to the story with every discovery. Though personally, I think it's up to us to solve the most important problem," said Odd, looking all around himself worriedly. "Xana?" "No," he responded in a very serious tone of voice. "Food! It's been ages since I last ate." Yumi felt her stomach contort. It was true. She hadn't had anything to eat either since she entered the mirror. Although they obviously couldn't eat anything here, could they? They were virtualized, and these weren't their physical bodies, and... "Let's go find something to eat," said Odd, getting up. The doors of the scanner opened with a hum, and the soldier fell flat on his stomach. Two of his squad mates were ready to catch him so that he would not hit his head hard from his fall. Hannibal Mago observed him while the soldiers laid him on the ground, and Memory leaned over him with a stethoscope to check his vital signs. "This is the 3rd man now that we sent to Lyoko," noted Mago, "and his condition seems just as bad as the others." Memory removed the stethoscope from her ears and nodded. "Yes," she confirmed. "He is still alive, but he's in a state of shock." "But why?" The woman stood and managed a shy smile. Mago immediately understood and motioned for her to follow him. They both returned to the lift and headed up to the ground floor of the factory, then entered the nomadic tent. Once there, Mago removed his shoes and dropped them onto the soft cushions. He picked her up a silver teapot that was spouting a fine stream of clear, aromatic vapor. The waiter had been diligent. At 5 o'clock on the dot, his tea was there. Hannibal served himself a cup and savored the bitter liquid. He didn't ask Memory if she would like some. He left her waiting there, standing around. "What happened to him?" he said several moments later, waving his hand. "I believe that it's due to the virtualization scanners," the woman replied. "When a human being is virtualized, their body completely disintegrates, and the computer takes the data and reconstructs it onto Lyoko." "Get to the point," ordered Mago. These technical details didn't interest him one bit. "At the time that the body is reconstructed in the virtual world, the computer doesn't base it on the physical structure of the real body, but instead uses the person's subconscious image of their own self. To put it shortly, on Lyoko, everyone takes on the characteristics that correspond with the feelings they have about themselves and how they see themselves. In a sense, on Lyoko, everyone finds their true form, which is very different than that of the one on our world." Mago finishes his tea. I completed several analyses and Memory continued to explain. On the images of Lyoko that I took through the eyes of our soldiers, they had all acquired monstrous appearances. One, for example, was transformed into an immense spider, and another was a child that seemed completely lost and was covered in a yellow substance that seemed like vomit. Gross, Mako commented, gasping in disgust. It doesn't surprise me that they were in a state of shock. Yes, it's difficult for us to face our greatest fears and accept the vision that we have of ourselves. These soldiers have dirtied their hands in all sorts of crime, and when Lyoko forces them to look reality in the face, they crumble and become immobilized. And they become completely useless, cried the leader of the Green Phoenix, standing up from his cushions and starting to pace back and forth. He needed his men to enter the 5th sector, the core of Lyoko, and to open the passage that would connect him to the first city. But how could they succeed if they become totally paralyzed the moment they set foot in the virtual world? With a bit of luck, Mako murmured, another unit might have a better chance. No, said Memory, looking at him unsteadily. I don't think that would... Try it. Send another group of soldiers to Lyoko to see what happens. If that doesn't work, continue experimenting. Maybe you'll come up with a useful idea. Yes, sir. I want a detailed report tomorrow morning, and tell Grigory Nictopoulos to be present. We must find a solution to this problem. Memory left the tent, giving a slight bow, leaving Mako alone again, staring fixedly at the large emerald tapestry. He hated this factory. It reeked of dust and grime. In no way was this appropriate accommodation for someone of his class. I feel human again, said Odd, wiping his mouth with one of his Catboy sleeves. Yumi studied him with a scrutinizing look. The truth is, when you eat, you become a real animal. You totally emptied out Hopper's fridge. Hopper's fridge! From 1994? I promise you he won't even notice. The young boy stood up from the table and opened the door to the enormous fridge that took up much of the space in the Hermitage's kitchen. Yumi's eyes opened wide. All while holding the control box in one hand, Odd was able to eat half a cold chicken, a ham and cheese sandwich, leftover lasagna, and a slice of pie. Yet all of this food remained in its original place. The chicken, enveloped in transparent plastic wrap, the lasagna on its plate. Everything remained as perfect as if it had never been touched. It was incredible. See? Odd told her, winking. And check out the table! Now that the boy was no longer touching the meat, the dirty dishes and the wrinkled napkins became transparent. Ta-da! Said Odd with a chuckle. This box is fantastic. A lot better than washing dishes. It's just like Xana said, noted Yumi. The mirror's navigation box allows us to touch and use any of the objects we see, but nothing can be modified in this world. There's nothing real here. Everything's virtual. But the food is really good, commented her friend, rubbing his stomach. Although, now that I think about it, it was 10 years past the expiration date. I hope that won't upset my stomach. Yumi continued to observe the table, from which the plates had already disappeared. Virtual or not, the food was really good, and the water too. She hadn't realized just how thirsty she was until she had drank almost an entire bottle. All right, she exclaimed. Now that we've stuffed our faces, we need to decide what we're going to do. We're trapped in this fragment of the past, and we can't warn the others that Xana is free. And at the same time, that computerized monster could be in the process of destroying everything. Exactly, confirmed Odd. Do you have a plan? We can continue to press the fast forward button. The mirror resembles a sort of DVD movie, so with a little bit of luck on our side, if we make it to the credits, the movie will end, and we'll return to the real world. That's cool with me. Odd approached her and took her hand. Hang on tight, he ordered. Then he pressed the button.
Poggers!
Just imagine having to eat while you're virtualized.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like that.
You could argue that the mirror is just weird and it's not like Lyoko,
Well,
but they don't bring that up. And this kind of implies... What about Aelita when she was stuck on Lyoko for all that time? Was she, like, starving? Did she sleep?
She just didn't know it, maybe?
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know. People being knocked out on Lyoko makes sense. Like, I wouldn't argue you couldn't be unconscious on Lyoko, because Aelita's unconscious like a good couple times in season 4.
Mm-hmm.
But
The warriors in general, whenever they get knocked out, when they're in teleportation mode, they get sent back to the skid, and then they're kind of unconscious for a bit.
yeah, so being unconscious on Lyoko, isn't far-fetched. That's pretty sensible. So Odd being like knocked out from the shock of Xana leaving his Lyoko form in the mirror isn't shocking. But needing to eat? Well, yeah,
Yes.
Nightmaric, it is sort of like Ghost Channel, but it's more of a pocket dimension rather than a simulation. So rather than running in Lyoko, it's running next to Lyoko.
Yeah, it's basically its own VM.
And yeah, I get you could program hunger into it, but I don't know why France would do that and then not do it for Lyoko or anything. Granted, if you're making Utopia, I guess you wouldn't want to program hunger.
The need to eat, yeah, it's better to just kind of leave that completely untouched.
It's also
You never
entirely
have to eat.
possible Odd is just hunger personified.
Yeah, but Yumi was hungry too, and she went along with it. So
I mean, maybe you
although
are
Odd has
hungry,
been
but like you don't realize it because it's Lyoko.
Odd
But,
has been
you know,
described
because
as
Odd is hunger personified. He realized he's hungry, and then Yumi's like, I guess I'm hungry too. Like Schrodinger's hunger. You're both hungry and not hungry until you affirm the existence of your hunger status.
yes, absolutely.
I mean, I like the idea of these pocket dimensions, though, or pocket virtual worlds that
I
run
do-
next to Lyoko.
like the concept of like the design of the first city. Oh, I don't know if we've got
No,
to
we're not
explore it
that
too
far.
much.
I think Void.
No.
I think the Voyage chapter is next.
No, we've been to the first city. Remember when they went to Brussels and they went into it?
Yeah,
That
And
was
Jeremy
where we
has-
met Hertz, wasn't it? Oh,
No, that was when. Not
Hertz
yet.
was the
No,
first
no, no.
trip
That was
into
the mirror. That was the
Hertz
mirror.
was the first trip into the mirror.
my
Yep.
bad.
And then the first city is the weird like. No, they went in the last book. They went to it, and it was like this is this super weird
yeah.
city. So they have been to it before.
Okay. Okay.
Like I'm not spoiling that it exists.
Fair enough.
It's just this book's all over the place. We're just like, what happened again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the mirror is a cool idea. Way of,
I
like-
really agree.
It
Using like
definitely
a
is.
simulation, using a virtual simulation to basically remember or create a diary in a sense.
Yeah, I think this is a little more engaging than like just the recordings that he made in his journal, the Franz Hopper's diary.
I think when trying to create like a special message for someone, I would honestly think like actually being able to experience the memory is much better than a diary. But Franz Hopper building the computer himself, or I guess in Chronicles not by himself.
Not by himself. He had a team.
But Hopper building the computer and then logging his experiments with it via a diary for himself is much more logically consistent because he just needs to remind himself of the memories. He doesn't need to live the memories. Whereas Aelita here, for the most part, didn't live a lot of this stuff, so she needs to live it to understand it. Now, I'm curious, is time in the mirror 1-to-1 scale with real world, or does the mirror run faster?
It's never clear, honestly.
I think it might be 1-to-1.
I mean, they spend time fast forwarding like through the diary a bit, but I think it is 1-to-1. So it takes as long in the real life as it would to experience the moment in the virtual.
Because Lyoko runs 1-to-1 essentially.
Yes.
True.
And so does the first city. So, yeah, I don't think there's any time displacement going on here.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first city sort of needed to, because when you're physically still in the real world, but time's moving faster in a virtual world, you're gonna, and like your VR immersed completely, you feel everything, then yeah, you kind of need to be running 1-to-1, otherwise your body's gonna go into shock. Maybe.
Yep.
Or you'll just go fucking crazy. I like the fact that Xano had to pace. But he's like, shit. Go down. I'm fucked.
That was, and then he's just like, why am I pacing? This is stupid. I'm not human.
Is Xana just gonna be human by the end of this? Because
I don't want to answer that.
I want to go jump off a cliff if that's gonna be the case.
Especially after that response. I just finished book 4, my private reading, because I wanted to privately read all the books again before actually doing the recordings. But I didn't want to start recording book 4 until I finished reading book 4.
Right now, you either gonna have 2 weeks for the set to record the sessions, or we might be doing because we might just not be doing it next week.
Well, yeah, next week
and all the other stuff.
Yep, that's fine.
What's kind of sus, Dark Xana? Xana? Mago? Is Mago kind of sus? I think Mago's kind of sus. Memory is Anthea, right? I'm not wrong thinking that. Flower.
What? Who?
I'm not gonna answer that.
I mean,
it's kind of obvious, but I don't want to confirm it just yet.
Okay.
You gotta wait.
Alright, since everyone apparently wants to mute up so we can continue, we might as well mute up so we can continue.
Sure.
These are really...
Here we go.
Chapter 9, The Mirror's End. Friday morning began with a timid sun and humid, cold, and thick air. Trees in the park shone with dewdrops. It was as if an army of fireflies were hidden among the bare branches. Jim Morrell sneezed and blew his nose. I don't understand why it has to be me specifically. Because Professor Hertz asked you to, Jeremy replied. The boy observed the sports teacher and sneered to himself. Jim was a robust man who was far younger than the rest of the teaching staff, to the point that the students almost considered him as one of them and referred to him by first name. He had crew-cut hair and always wore a ridiculous adhesive bandage on his cheek that, in his opinion, gave him a tough guy look. And on that day, he also had a red nose due to the chill. Okay, he insisted. But why did your parents have to come here on precisely this day, and all together as well? And why are Alita, you and your little group of friends not in class like everyone else? Hertz explained the situation to you, didn't she? Yes, Jim admitted. But to tell the truth, I didn't really understand much of it. Jeremy gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder, and they both arrived at Caddick's Gate, where the kids' parents were waiting for them. Takeo and Akiko Ishiyama, Yumi's father and mother, who live in an area nearby, came on foot. Odd's parents, Robert and Marguerite, quickly joined them. The Ishiyamas and Robert had the same lost, confused expression on their faces. It was because of the man with 2 dogs, who Walter Stern had called Grigory Nictopoulos. According to Hertz, this despicable man had used the memory snatching machine on them. Jeremy looked all around him until he spotted who he was looking for. He was there, a little further away from the others and seated on the edge of the footpath just the other side of the gate. His father, Michael Belpois. He was a tall and skinny man with blonde hair, which was becoming sparser around his ears, and disappearing completely on the top of his head. He was dressed in a tweed suit like that of an English teacher from a previous decade, and round glasses identical to his son's sat upon his nose. "Dad!" Jeremy cried as he ran towards him. "How are you?" "Good. Your mother told me to send you a kiss and an enormous hug. But are you up to something? Why aren't you in class?" "Ahem." Jeremy cleared his throat, giving him a surprised look. "What did Professor Hertz tell you?" "That I needed to come here as soon as possible," he responded before gesturing to the rest of the parents with his head. "And I see that I'm not the only one." During this time, Jim had approached them, trying to be kind. The Ishiyamas and Robert de la Robia's faces hadn't changed expression after hearing his jokes, while Odd's mother even seemed upset. Jeremy decided to make Jeremy decided to take matters into his own hands. Come on, he explained. Professor Hertz is waiting for you. We'll have time to talk later. The darn factory didn't even have running water. Throughout his life, Mago hadn't really been a very privileged person. He came from a very poor family, and to be able to survive, he had needed to enlist in the army as soon as he came of age. But this place was truly intolerable. In comparison, some military bases in Eastern Europe seemed like five-star hotels. Excuse me, sir, may we enter? Memory's voice asked from outside the tent. The man finished washing his face with water from the dish and glanced in the mirror. His hair had been well combed, and his golden canine teeth gave him a wolf-like appearance, or vampire-like. Come in, he said after fixing his purple hat in his head. Memory and Grigory Nictopoulos obeyed. Well, Mago asked them as he sat down comfortably on the cushions. Any news? For the moment, we've sent 22 of our best soldiers to Lyoko, Memory began to explain. None of them have managed to take even a single step, except for one. Mago raised an eyebrow, suddenly interested, and Memory continued. He's Soldier James Fairland, sir. Just after materialization on Lyoko, he began to run as fast as he could, terrified. Getting him out of the virtual world was quite a feat. I'm afraid that he may never recover. In other words, nothing, a total failure, Mago said, his mouth twisted in a dissatisfied expression. Yes, sir. As I've already told you, it's not possible for adults to enter Lyoko. But some people have succeeded, sir, Grigory interrupted. He had an intense look in his eyes, one that was dark and lifeless, like a predator. Like those brats, for example, and one adult, Professor Hopper. Are you sure? I revised all my recordings and the data from the file. Apparently, Hopper went to Lyoko with his daughter, Aelita, and he never came back. Great. Fantastic, Mago commented sarcastically. Hopper is a peculiar person, Memory added. After all, he is the creator of Lyoko, and what's more, we have no idea what effects virtualization had on him. Hannibal Mago slammed his fist into the coffee table beside him, and his rings jingled menacingly. So, in short, our only way to enter Lyoko is to resort to using a peculiar person. Or a child, is that it? He groused, then turned towards Memory with an inquisitive look. You, my friend, you are undoubtedly very special. The woman didn't even flinch, and Mago smiled. Excellent. Memory's loyalty was absolute. At least the money he gave Walter Stern for the memory snatching machine had been a good investment. If you'd allow me, sir, I wouldn't recommend that, Grigory intervened, shaking his head. Memory's the only one who knows how to operate the supercomputer. If what happened to the rest of our soldiers happens to her as well, we won't stand a chance. That's true, he admitted with a look of disappointment. On the other hand, Grigory continued, the children are dispensable. I'm thinking of Jeremy Belpois, for example, the boss of the little gang. He would be perfect. It wouldn't be difficult to convince him to work with us. Grigory could have really ingenious ideas sometimes. So be it, said Mago, rising to his feet. Bring me this Jeremy. Yes, sir, I will go tonight. Jeremy waited alone in front of Professor Hertz's office. The recuperation procedure had been carried out without any problems, and Yumi and Odd's parents had regained their memory before going to the dormitory with the rest of the kids. They had much to discuss. But Jeremy had preferred not to go with them. At this very moment, Hertz was using the memory snatching machine on his father. The boy had helped the teacher install the apparatus that very morning. It was a simple pair of leather gloves with metallic sensors on the fingertips that were connected to an LCD monitor on the back, along with a potentiometer, the device that allowed the user to control the machine's intensity. The potentiometer was also connected via Bluetooth to a large computer that analyzed the person's brain and recorded their memories, or gave them back, like what was happening now. The office door then opened, and Professor Hertz exited into the hallway, accompanying Michael Belpois, who was holding her arm. How do you feel, Dad? How do you feel, Dad? Jeremy gushed, jumping to his feet. I have a bit of a headache. The professor helped the man to sit in the chair Jeremy was just occupying. It'll pass, his son assured him. Michael nodded silently and raised a hand to caress his head. I always knew you had so much worth, but now that I have my memories back, Suzanne, that is, Professor Hertz, brought me up to date. You really proved yourself like a real champion. Jeremy coughed, blushing, and gleamed his glasses on his shirt so nobody would notice he was close to blubbering. You've also been great, Dad, he murmured. The professor told me that you were one of the people who invented the scanners. Yes, the scanners. It seems strange to me now to not have thought about it for all these years. They disappeared from my mind. They were completely erased. But now I remember everything. Michael looked at his son and winked. And it's more than about time to get back to work. The both of us, isn't it? Yumi and Odd were in the living room of the Hermitage. Aelita was lying on the couch and seemed ill. She was drenched in sweat, seemed exhausted, and had a wet cloth on her forehead. Hopper was working by her side with a laptop on his knees. "Aelita!" Odd exclaimed. "So we're not completely alone!" Yumi looked at him and gave a sad smile. "Unfortunately, it's not what it seems. In this world, Aelita is just a recording. Look closely. She looks human, not elven like she usually does on Lyoko." Yumi took the control box and looked at the small screen. 1st of June, 1994. They had arrived on the final day for Aelita and her father before their long voyage within Lyoko. The girl would not come out of the supercomputer for several years, and Hopper never would. In a way, it was the last day of their lives. Aelita turned the cloth over on her forehead. Her cheeks were colored an intense red that matched her flamboyant hair. "How are you feeling?" her father asked her. "I have a really bad headache," she murmured. "That's because of the memory snatching machine," Hopper said, turning his gaze away from the laptop and smiling at her. "I've never used it in the opposite way before. You'll see, it'll wear off soon." "The memory snatching machine," Odd whispered, but Yumi gestured for him to be quiet. Maybe they would find out about it later. "And the secret room?" Aelita asked, seeming concerned. "Is everything ready?" "Yes," Hopper assured her. "I did everything like we said. The Brûlé brothers built the walls that hide the first room as well as the second one. It's very unlikely that anyone will become aware of their existence." "Can I tell you something? I'm afraid of forgetting everything. Since you used the machine, I felt very strange, as if parts of my memory are dying to leave me. I'm scared." Hopper held her tenderly. "Don't worry. I left a video in the room, and you have my notebook in the attic. I drew a map in invisible ink inside it, showing you how to enter. That way, you can always find the secret room again, if need be." "A video? So you also think that... You think that I could forget everything?" his daughter asked, visibly worried. Hopper looked away from her. Yumi immediately noticed the dark shadow of concern that overtook his gaze. So it was true. Hopper really had done something to Aelita, something that caused her memory loss. So that was how she'd forgotten everything, from the secret room to the fact that she knew Yumi and the others' parents very well. The young girl could now explain the sad tone of voice the professor had in the video in the secret room. He knew perfectly well that when Aelita saw it, she would be a completely different person, without the slightest memory of any of this. "I promise that everything will be okay," Hopper whispered. "I'm sure of it." At that moment, someone knocked loudly at the front door. "Professor, we know you're in there," someone shouted from outside. "Come out with your hands in the air and don't try to resist." Yumi instinctively stood up and ran to look through the living room window. Standing on the Hermitage's front porch were 3 men completely dressed in black, suits, ties, sunglasses, and with guns in hand. "They're the same ones that chased me and Ulrich around Brussels," Yumi cried, raising her hands to her mouth. "So things are about to get ugly," Odd announced. "Look, Hopper knows it too." The professor had stood up and was trembling. His eyes started all around him, looking lost, and then he ran into the kitchen. When he came out a moment later, he was holding a pistol in his hands. Alita scrutinized it, eyes wide. "Daddy, what are you going to do?" "Suzanne left it in case we ran into any problems," Hopper replied to his daughter, forcing a smile. "But don't worry, I have no intention of using it." Yumi and Odd shared a worried glance. "Professor, come out of the house with your hands up. Don't make us come in there." Hopper gripped the pistol and pointed it towards the door. "I'm armed," he screamed. "If you enter, I'll fire. Get out of here!" Yumi squatted out of instinct, causing Odd to do the same. "He's terrified," she whispered. "Things could get out of hand." The men in black began to shout again from behind the door. Hopper seized Aelita's hand, trying to get her up from the couch, but the girl was too weak. She remained seated, breathless, and her head fell back against the back of the seat in a chaotic cascade of red hair. "This is your final warning, Professor," the men in black cried. "Let us in." Hopper looked around him, not really knowing what to do or where to go. His forehead and hair were beaded with large drops of sweat. Then the sound of glass shattering broke the silence. A black-covered elbow had broken part of the glass in the window, sending a transparent rain onto the floor. A hand then stuck itself into the room. It was wearing a dark glove and holding a gun. Yumi couldn't move. It was such a crazy scene, so different from her normal life, that the girl couldn't believe that it had actually happened. The professor let out a cry, aghast, and the weapon almost slipped out of his hand. There was a gunshot. Hopper dropped the smoking weapon, horrified. "He shot! Return fire!" The weapon in the window began to shoot. A thin blaze drew a line straight between the shadows, and a fraction of a second later, Yumi heard Aelita's cry. The girl whipped around and suddenly felt like she was moving in slow motion. Her friend's hair was whipped as if disturbed by a light breeze, and a trail of blood began to drip down her forehead. They shot her, Odd murmured, stammering. They shot Aelita! Hopper stifled a cry of despair upon seeing his daughter collapse on the floor. He ran to her and took her in his arms. He then dashed out of the room, running as fast as he could. Yumi and Odd hurried to follow Hopper through the main hallway and down the stairs to the underground. Behind them, the men in black broke down the door. You just need to hang on for a few more minutes, my dear. Then we'll be safe, Hopper whispered to his daughter. The professor ignored the cold room and continued to the metal door leading to the secret passage to the factory. They'll find us, Lita said to her father. Don't worry, he said with a fragile smile. It's not easy to find the right way down here. And once on Lyoko, your body will be dematerialized, and this head wound will be healed like magic, trust me. Yumi and Odd followed them inside the passage and finally entered the sewers. Well, what happened to Aelita? Odd asked anxiously. We don't have to worry about that, Yumi smiled. In the present, she's still alive and in perfect health, right? That means that she survived, that Hopper managed to virtualize her into Lyoko in time. After finishing her reasoning, the girl reflected for a moment and continued. On the other hand, there is something that worries me. We're following Hopper, and he's already sealed the secret room and is ready to escape to Lyoko forever. Yes, and? And if these are his memories, how can we see them? The recording in the mirror should have finished at least 2 days ago. There's something strange about all this. Odd shrugged. You said that we're in a sandwich... You said that we're in a sand machine thingy inside the supercomputer at the factory, right? Sandbox, Yumi nodded. Yes, Jeremy called it that. So maybe Hopper recorded his memories directly into the supercomputer. Ulrich let out a mocking laugh and slapped Jeremy's shoulder. You know what, he said. Now I know where you get it from. Meaning? He and his father were side by side, the same glasses, a twisted shape on their noses, and with the same grease stains on their clothes. Nothing, man, nothing. Ulrich avoided giving the response, laughing again quietly. Eva and Richard then arrived, holding a platter of glasses and a jar of lemonade. The teen told them in a satisfied voice that the repairs on the mechanical arm were almost finished. According to Mr. Ishiyama, they would finish it at around 6 in the afternoon. Jeremy and his father sat down on the small sofa in the secret room in the Hermitage, facing the old television in which Hopper left his video for Aelita. The boy looked at his watch. It was 2:30. It seemed incredible that Odd's father and Yumi's parents had sped up the repairs so much. They must have rebuilt their old friendship while at work. The only problem is that, with the motherboard melted, he murmured, we need to build another one. That could take us months, and we need to ask for help from a specialized workshop. He thought again about Odd and Yumi, imprisoned in the mirror. He hoped with all his heart that nothing had happened to them in the meantime. By his side, his father finished his drink. Don't be pessimistic, he told him in an encouraging tone. The fuses save the most delicate parts of the system. But the motherboard? I'm the one who designed it, along with Hopper. To save parts, we used a normal circuit board with some small adjustments. So all we need to do is take a computer apart, and that's it. Will this do? Richard said, taking out his palm computer. Out of the question, Jeremy blurted, shaking his head with a smile. The Hopix codes are on that. But if I remember correctly, Odd has a laptop under his bed that he never uses. I doubt he'll be angry if we use it to save his life. Richard and Eva leapt up, offering to look for it at Caddick. Michael gave them a nod. Takeo Ishiyama would have my head if I don't bring his daughter back safe and sound before dinner. Family is sacred to him. He told me that many times in the old factory, years ago, he commented, laughing. Hopper waded through the ankle-deep, black and nasty-smelling water in the sewers. With some difficulty, he managed to climb a wall, gripping a series of iron handles encrusted in the reinforced concrete. Yumi and Odd followed closely behind him and came out on the bridge to the old factory. They realized that, at that moment, it didn't seem so old. The road was already blocked, there were warning signs everywhere, and the bridge hadn't yet rusted. Hopper entered the factory and descended to the lower floor using a comfortable metal staircase. This is different to having to swing down on ropes like we have to do, Odd cried. Yeah, in 10 years, this place had really fallen to bits, Yumi confirmed. The two teens shuffled into the elevator with Hopper and Aelita. Their friend's head was tilted back and her eyes were closed, her breathing ragged. Her blood still flowed, running down her cheeks as she mumbled incomprehensible sentences in a low voice. Hopper went straight down to the second underground floor where the scanners were, and gently left Aelita on the floor. He then kissed her forehead. I'm sorry, my dear, he said, rummaging in his coat pockets and taking out a memory card. I record my last memories and put them all in my virtual journal. After that, you and I will cross the threshold into Lyoko. You'll see, we'll begin a new life there, far away from the men in black and the Green Phoenix. The scene the kids were seeing before their eyes began to slow down, and they felt their chests tighten. This was the professor's final goodbye to Earth. They followed him to the third underground floor, which held the supercomputer. They observed him pick up a strange machine from the floor, consisting of a pair of leather gloves with a screen on the back. Hopper inserted the memory card into the gloves, put them on, and rested his fingertips against his forehead, and then he disappeared. It was very sudden. 1 minute the professor was there in front of them, as if in real life, and the next he was no longer there. The supercomputer room was empty. "What happened?" Yumi cried. "Hey," Odd interrupted. "That thing uses memory cards identical to the one my mother found when my father was attacked." "Yeah, Hopper must be the one who built it, a machine that collects memories. But the card contained my father's memories. Alita's mother appeared on it. How could my father know her?" They both remained silent, overwhelmed. They then took the elevator together to the scanner room. It was empty, lifeless. Alita was no longer there, nor was Professor Hopper. Yumi sat on the floor and began to reflect on everything. "The machine we saw records memories. If that's so, then it seems obvious that Hopper could only insert the memories up until that moment into his journal. So, does that mean the journal stops there?" Yumi nodded. "The professor recorded his memory, and then put it in the sandbox for Alita to find. He then returned here and went to Lyoko with her. That must be how it happened, more or less." "How disappointing," Odd sighed. "It's like watching a movie and finding out that they cut out the last few minutes." "But Alita was already in bad shape before she was shot," Yumi thought. "Hopper must have done something to her. Something that affected her memories. And then he brought her to Lyoko and shut the supercomputer down, and they remained trapped there for several years." Yumi took the mirror control box and looked at the screen. A new message had appeared on it, but they hadn't gone back to reality yet. What could that mean? Too much time has passed. Jeremy and the others must have run into a serious problem. She and Odd can only count on each other. "Look," Odd suddenly murmured. The doors to the room became brighter, an intense yellow color, and the 3 scanner columns in a triangle formation in the center of the room began to vibrate. "Someone's materializing here. Maybe it's Professor Hopper coming back. Or maybe it's Ulrich coming to help us," Yumi exclaimed, filled with hope. The vibrations increased in volume before stopping all of a sudden. Then there was a sharp crack. The doors of one of the scanner columns opened, sliding to the side. Inside was a young man a little taller than Yumi, with slightly long hair and a strange smile on his face. "He looks a bit like your friend, William Dunbar," Odd whispered. The boy's smile widened. "Ah, but I am not William. I am Xana." Chapter 10. Voyage to the Center of the First City. When they all reunited in the living room of the Hermitage, it was about 8 o'clock in the evening. Mrs. Della Robbia ordered them pizzas and all ate them while sitting on the couch and on the floor. At first, Jeremy was afraid that he would feel uncomfortable, but they ended up talking non-stop for over an hour, distracted by Mr. Della Robbia's jokes, who liked to make them almost as much as his son. "So then," continued Robert, "Hopper tripped, the scanner fell on top of him, and—" Ulrich almost choked on his drink with his mouth full. Then he burst out laughing. Everyone laughed, except for Jeremy and Eva. "Why are you so serious?" his father asked him. Jeremy lowered his head. Because I think it's time that we should use the scanner. We already fixed it, and I'd like to use it immediately to bring Yumi and Odd back." Then he gave a big sigh before continuing. "No offense, but I think that it should be us, the kids, who enter." "Of course," commented his father, who had suddenly become very serious. "Right, of course," added Akiko Ishiyama. "Only children can use the scanners. It's a terrifying experience for an adult." "I've always wondered," asked Ulrich. "Why is that?" Well, it's a matter of mental representation, the way that each person imagines themselves subconsciously. Us adults normally make mistakes throughout our lives and then do things that we regret. Over time, that can cause us to create really terrifying mental images of ourselves. Shortly after having begun our experiments, I myself entered the scanner to test it. I was only on the Lyoko for 9 seconds, but it took weeks for me to stop shaking like a leaf." Jeremy stood and wiped the breadcrumbs off his sweater. "All right, then we can head to the attic. Alita and Ulrich will enter the mirror." Eva raised her hand to ask to speak. "Yes?" spoke Marguerite Della Robbia, who had immediately...
Oh, sorry, we're experiencing
So
technical
it looks like
difficulties.
Twitch is fine, but our stream just suddenly started. It was frozen in the last chapter. And
No, that's right. I don't know why stopping the
Voyage to
stream
center of
crashed
the first city.
movies.
"Really terrifying to the mirror."
You could
Eva-
hear the stream, right? It just
I
wasn't the
could hear
pictures.
it. I just couldn't see it, but the flickering was distracting.
Pick up. We'll start however far we were at 1 minute. I still don't know why it closed when I said end stream, but all right.
always wondered, asked Oric, why is that? Well, it's a matter of,
It is ways
well, it's
using
a
internet.
matter of mental representation,
Also flower.
the way that each
Remute.
person imagines themselves subconsciously. Us adults normally make mistakes throughout our lives and then do things that we regret. Over time, that can cause us to create really terrifying mental images of ourselves. Shortly after having begun our experiments, I myself entered the scanner to test it. I was only on the Oka for 9 seconds, but it took weeks for me to stop shaking like a leaf. Jeremy stood and wiped the breadcrumbs off his sweater. Alright, then we can head to the attic. Alina and Ulrich will enter the mirror. Eva raised her hand to ask to speak. Yes, spoke Marguerite de la Robia, who had immediately taken a liking to the girl. You see, I think that the first thing we should do isn't to enter the mirror, but the other sandbox, the first city. The one that Ulrich and Yumi discovered in Brussels. The young girl stuttered for a moment before continuing. We're all very worried about Yumi and Odd, but we have to remember that right now, less than a kilometer away from us, there is a factory full of soldiers, and they're probably trying to reactivate Lyoko to transform the first city into a weapon. It's true, Professor Hertz added. The situation is dire, and every moment is critical. But sending our kids to the city could be dangerous, objected Walter Stern. I've battled against Xana tons of times, Ulrich said to his father with a smile. Simple soldiers don't scare me. Besides, I'll be super careful, I promise. Jeremy decided that it was time to get to work. So it's agreed then. We'll make 2 teams. Ulrich and Eva will enter the first city, and immediately afterwards, Alita will go to the mirror to save our friends. Let's do it! Jeremy looked at her and Eva nodded. Was this kid suspicious of something? Xana realized that he had been holding in his breath. He exhaled slowly, annoyed. Again, another stupid human habit. Patience was the key. In several moments, he would be safe in the first city. He didn't know what Alita would discover when she entered the mirror. It had already been some time since he had last contact with the part of him within there. But most likely, Odd and Yumi already knew the truth and wanted to alert their friends. In the first city, however, he had nothing to fear. Once there, he could sever the connection with Jeremy's computer and finally complete his mission. He smiled. Stay strong, Ulrich reassured her upon seeing her smile. We'll meet up again there. The virtualization won't hurt, just tickle a bit. I'm not scared, the young girl responded with a neutral tone. Why would he be? It was a computer, and he had entered and exited these virtual worlds a multitude of times. The doors to the scanner opened in front of Eva and closed behind her. The inside of the scanner was lined with smooth walls reflecting the face that Xana could not recognize as his own. But soon enough, he would recover his true form. He closed his eyes while the humming of the scanner grew louder and louder. He felt a gust of wind that lifted his body into the air and his feet off the floor. He threw his head back, and his hair flew around his head like a million tentacles. It tickled a bit, as Ulrich had said, and then he landed with a small jump. Eva Skinner opened her eyes. All around her rose an immense city. Tall towers stood jarringly against the color of the sky. They were tapered with sky-blue rooftops covered in dark specks. Surrounding these imposing buildings were gently winding roads that appeared as if they were made of colorful crystals. There were smaller houses that resembled Chinese pagodas and narrow streets illuminated by joyful paper lanterns suspended above the doors. Within Eva, Xana struggled for a second to maintain control. He had already been here before. These sections of his memory were still incomplete, and he needed to return to Lyoko to finish reconstructing them, but a part of him could still remember. The paths he would take through the city from one end to the other had been well engraved in his mind. He stretched out his hand towards the wall of the house closest to him, and the bricks separated, gliding as if they were liquid until creating a portal through which he could pass. The city welcomed its master. Oof! Ulrich exhaled upon landing. After the virtualization, the young boy had changed in appearance. His sweater and jeans were replaced with a short samurai kimono. He wore his hair held back in a headband, and attached to his belt was the empty sheath to his katana. He was unarmed. Wonderful. Wow, said Ulrich. You look nice. At first, Eva didn't understand what he meant. Then she looked at her feet and shuddered. She was wearing large black boots that went up to her knees and ridiculous jeans that were a radioactive pear green and very tight. Up top, she had on a phosphorescent shirt covered with roses in the shape of an electric guitar and the name Seb Digital all over. Just what kind of person was Eva? Couldn't she have transformed into a warrior, a firefighter, anything other than this? Thanks, she muttered. Did you make it? Jeremy's voice resounded in the ears of the two kids. Are you all right? Yes, replied Ulrich, talking to the wind, and I read you loud and clear. Great, Jeremy continued. I'm going to interrupt our communication for a bit now. It's time to virtualize Alita into the mirror. We'll talk later. Okay. Jeremy's voice disappeared. Eva heard a small click and the silence returned. So, Ulrich asked her in a friendly manner, what do we do now? We have a tour, proposed Eva. All right, but we'll have to be careful. If I remember correctly, there are several monsters roaming around this place. Eva smiled. She wasn't afraid of monsters. They were her allies. Hello, Yumi, can you hear me? Asked Jeremy. Alita pressed her chin into the space between the young boy's shoulder and neck to get a better look at the computer screen. The image was deformed by electrical discharge, and a confusing mix of white and gray lines were all there was to see. What, Yumi? Do you hear me? It's Jeremy. They still didn't respond. I'm going in, said Alita, strongly grabbing her friend's arm. I might be able to find them. Could be dangerous, the boy protested. I don't care. While he was talking, Jeremy continued to type away at the keyboard. He tried to call his friends again. Jeremy? Odd's voice finally came in through static. You chose the perfect moment to turn up. Little by little, the image on the screen became clearer and clearer, showing what their friend could see. Yumi was there, dressed as a geisha, and in front of them was a young, dark-haired man with his back turned. The image deformed due to the static electricity, but the factory scanner columns could still be distinguished. Alita's mouth was wide open, and she was taken aback. This boy looked very familiar. But where had she seen him before? And who's this guy? Asked Jeremy. Jeremy, they heard Yumi's voice through the computer speakers. There was more interference and the video disappeared. Jeremy slammed his fist onto the keyboard. Did you figure out where they are? Asked Alita. Yes, in a place called End of the Journal, but I don't have a clue how they got there. The young girl sighed. Well, she exhaled, let me enter the mirror, and I will try to find them. Jeremy nodded, and Alita waved bye to Richard. Odd and Yumi's parents witnessed the scene wordlessly, although they had worried expressions on their faces. The young girl entered the scanner. Ulrich didn't understand what was happening. When he entered the first city with Yumi the first time, they had been almost immediately attacked by an army of flying monsters who fired laser beams at them. Now, however, the streets were deserted. This is strange, he murmured. It's just us. He turned towards Eva and saw her lips moving. Had he gone crazy, or did this girl just say, memory download completed? What was that? He asked her. Nothing, answered the young girl while shrugging her shoulders. I was thinking to myself. Eva was really sublime in her rock star outfit, but Ulrich started to feel uncomfortable. He was getting the feeling that this girl seemed too at ease in this new and somewhat sinister world. Where are we going? He asked. What, you told me that you and Yumi met up with Hopper the last time you were here. Do you know where? Ulrich thought for a bit. Yeah, in a park at the center of the city. There were tall crystal trees and... Yeah, the park, Eva suddenly said. I think it's this way. Okay, now the situation was getting really bizarre, but Jeremy had interrupted their communication in order to virtualize Alita into the mirror, and Ulrich was unarmed. He found it ridiculous that he was worrying so much over Eva. She was just an everyday average girl, and to top it all off, Odd's girlfriend. She couldn't be that bad, just a tad eccentric, that's all. Eva walked with a firm step as she led them to a small square. At its center, multicolored jets of water fell from a fountain that turned to soap bubbles floating in the air. Over here, the young girl guided him. Ulrich saw a group of flying mantis on patrol from the corner of his eye. They were strange, flat and triangular creatures that used their thin bodies like the sail of a boat. They had two small, soft horns in their muzzles and a large tail from which they could fire lasers. The young boy jumped and instinctively placed his hand at his side, but his sword's sheath was empty. It didn't matter, though. The mantis formed a circle above their heads, and they flew away through the air as if they hadn't even noticed their presence. I need to calm down, thought Ulrich. I'm starting to hallucinate. Eva was about to head down a narrow road between the houses at the end of the square. Had this road always been there? Ulrich didn't remember it. It seemed to him that on the other side of the fountain there had been nothing but a compact row of houses. He suddenly stopped. You, he said to Eva. Who are you? The young girl furrowed her brow, and Ulrich began to feel stupid, but he should trust his instincts. These mantas, he continued, passed by us, and they didn't even see us. You walk around as if you owned the place, and now you opened an alleyway. I don't know how, but I'm sure that that road wasn't there a minute ago. The house has moved aside to let you pass. Yes, was Eva's simple response. It's pointless to continue on with this act anyway. The young girl fell to her knees and opened her mouth. Ulrich saw a cloud of black smoke exiting from between her lips and then from her nose as well. The smoke twisted in the air, becoming more and more dense. It started to take form. Shortly after, Eva was spread out on the ground, unconscious, and in front of her appeared a tall young man with dark hair. Xana, he murmured. The young man didn't reply. He turned his back to Ulrich and started walking away. Ulrich grumbled, jumped ahead of him, and blocked the way. He held his fists up to his face and bent his legs, readying himself. Did you think I'd let you off the hook just like that? Xana smiled. There was no warmth in his face. It was as if his mouth moved separately from the rest of his body. I'm the one who let you off the hook. I need to find Professor Hopper, and I have absolutely no need for you. So you can do as you please. Take care of that stupid kid until she wakes up. Explore a little, or go take a nap. Anything's fine with me, so long as you keep to yourself. A crazy, obnoxious laugh came from Ulrich's mouth. Of course, why not? Then you'll let me return to the Hermitage? That you won't be able to do, because I've closed off the communication channels with the real world. I needed to wait several minutes so that your friend could establish contact with the mirror. You see, it's been days now since I possessed the body of your roommate. When the Hermitage scanner broke, I lost contact with that part of me, and I needed to recover my memory of the latest events in order to devise my course of action. Odd! Xana had taken possession of Odd's body! So that was the reason why Eva insisted on being immediately virtualized to the First City. That was the reason why Ulrich snapped out of his thoughts when he felt his blood rush to his head and his breathing accelerate more and more. He jumped forward and lifted his right leg, giving a roundhouse kick into the air. He froze mid-jump, the ball of his foot suspended only centimeters away from Xana's face. He was paralyzed. What a bother, sighed the young man, while lowering his hand with the palm facing down. A sudden gust of wind violently pushed Ulrich back. His back slammed into the door of a house and took a hit to the head before falling to the ground. Here, you're on my turf, said Xana. Don't cause me to lose my patience. As far as I'm concerned, whether I kill you now or let you live is of no importance. The young man with black hair slowly left, disappearing into an alley. Instantly, Ulrich turned his gaze towards Eva Skinner, who was still unconscious. Should he try to wake her up? She wasn't in any danger, seeing as the monsters wouldn't attack her, and he needed to make a decision. He stood up again, rubbing his back with his hands, and started off after his enemy.
Ba ba bum ba bum.
Yes. All that
Xana.
happened.
Whoa.
Xana,
I missed
have
like
the
half of
power
that.
of God on my side.
The Ulrich and Eva went to the First City, and Xana basically revealed himself. He had Eva. So we found out Eva's virtual form is just a Subdigital's groupie.
Ah.
Which
Okay.
I think is just perfection. It's like Ulrich, yeah, he's a samurai warrior. Yumi is a geisha. Odd's a fucking purple cat character who'd be like the protagonist of some weird video game. And
Nah.
Eilita is an elf girl. Jeremy is a fairy boy. And then there's just like the least fantasy character type in the universe, a musical groupie. A musical group.
Yeah.
I'm down. As much as I'm kind of mad about Eva as a whole, her Lyoko form and her abilities are pretty unique.
No, I'm not saying her Lyoko form. I'm just you have these super fantasy. You have all these fantasy Lyoko designs.
Remember, Lyoko doesn't have to be fantasy. It can be fantastical, but it doesn't have to be fantasy.
I'm not saying
True.
it does. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
I'm just saying it's fantasy, and then there's Eva. Lyoko design. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's just so different from all the other ones. It's kind of funny.
So Xana left Eva's body, so Eva's just kind of chilling at the center of this First City. Xana's there yeah, I'm gonna go do my own thing. You can do whatever, just leave me alone.
Bye.
I mean, Xana's a god. Yes.
Yeah, he's I'm the master of this world. You can't touch me. I'm gonna go look for Hopper. Okay, bye.
Can't touch boo boo doo.
Already in new virtual
No, go on, Weezy. Go on,
world
Weezy.
for 2 minutes, and he's decided that it's his now. My city.
Well,
Sorry.
it is his city.
Yeah.
See, I think he thinks the Hopper, the Franz Hopper who's in the city, is the Franz Hopper that he was searching for in the entirety of season 4, but it's actually just sort of like a program memory.
He's
France.
the villain from Kung Fu Panda. Finally,
he's
a
the-
worthy opponent.
No. He's
Our battle.
He's like the librarian guy in Ready Player One.
You're right. Uh,
Well, the first
Yeah.
city doesn't exist in the canon timeline. Because remember, Chronicles isn't canon.
No,
or
definitely.
good. We could bring it in Project Eradication.
I joked about that the other day in Caddick Chat. I'm like, we'll just make. No, I think it was just Steph. I don't know. I was somewhere.
To be
And
fair,
And I brought up you can make them both canon if you really try hardy and just kind of say Chronicles takes place after Evolution and try to like get rid of the lore problems that entails.
Yeah.
You mean the fact that in the recap they skipped over Evolution in its entirety?
Nah. You could still make it work, but.
No, you just no. You just put Evolution after Chronicles, and hold up, everyone gets their memory wiped before.
Oh my god.
Except the Warriors, but the Warriors just never bring it up because holy shit, it was a mess.
I know how Chronicles
Well-
ends, and I know just it would be even harder to try and put Chronicles before Evolution in the timeline. So
Oh no, you memory
At
wipe.
what point?
You could just memory wipe everyone. They
At
do
what
it. They do
point
it at
in
the end of Men in
Chronicles-
Black 2.
gosh.
there's a
At what
certain.
point in Chronicles?
What were you to say?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say there's a certain the way the books end. I literally just reread it. I remembered it very well because it's kind of a ride, but I just read it today. I'm like, there's this one teensy little problem that you'd have to deal with.
Xander being actually dead.
Well, I guess we'll see. But,
I can't. It's super
Xander
big
being a
spoiler,
human?
so
That's what it is, isn't it, Flower? I don't know. You just virtualize
Oh my
him
God.
and send him to the cortex.
he just like then like as soon as he's
Alright,
all good, he
Xana,
goes
now-
back to evil, and then just runs away and chills in the cortex, and they have to fight him all over again. Except also Anthea's there with them, so now you have to figure out that whole plot snarl of how
He just gets
Anthea's both with
kidnapped again,
Tyrone.
duh.
Of
He just gets
course.
kidnapped again.
Fans was wrong.
But like, she gets kidnapped in a clever way that makes it look like she died.
And dyes her
Yeah.
hair blonde.
See, this
Yeah.
explains how Aelita recognizes her older looking mother.
Oh my gosh.
And they all just there and in
Okay,
this
well, technically, in a way, we already have.
sorry.
Nah, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and like, in order to explain away the big time gap that you would need to like explain all the changes from the end of Chronicles to the start of Evolution, is that everyone just got held back because of all this nonsense they had to deal with, and they all did terrible grades. So that's why they're all still in Caddick.
Because
No, that's why a lot of the characters don't appear as well, because they've all like moved on to different things, and everybody else got held back. Sissy got held back too because it's Sissy, but everybody else.
Samantha didn't get held back, or no, she did. That's why. And she
Yeah.
makes sense because of the freaking troublemaking and the
no,
problems she has.
oh, guys, and then Samantha is just mind wiped Ava.
Oh my
Skinner.
god.
There we go.
Oh
there
my
we go.
god.
I can accept that.
I
No,
hate
I can
that
accept that.
works.
I can accept
And
that.
the reason Odd's so excited she's back is because she had to go back to the U.S. for a little bit.
Nah, I can
So Dito,
accept
so Dito could work out
that.
the
I like
thing
that. That's
with her parents and whatnot, and be like, okay, so this girl, we're gonna call her Samantha Knight now. She's gonna go live in France, because she has a boyfriend there, and mind wipe. Perfect. Oh my gosh, Chronicles explains evolution. Oh, it's beautiful. We should actually
Gosh.
make a prequel episode that connects Chronicles into Evolution for Project Eradication.
I'm leaving Project Eradication. Due to creative differences.
You can't, Wazy. I own you.
Oh no.
I own you now. Don't you know?
Ah, crap. I knew this day would come.
Another reason to take a shot. I'm gonna get some water real quick, and then we'll read the last 2 chapters.
Oh,
Oh boy.
it just keeps getting crazier and crazier as this plot goes on. So
Yeah.
be prepared.
I'm ready.
Book 2 is my favorite because it's the closest to the feel of the show. After that, it just goes full tilt insanity. Like, part of me likes insanity, and part of me is just like, this doesn't feel like CL anymore.
This Chronicles is its own demon, and like, you just gotta deal with that, you know? It is what it is. But something I was actually going to say earlier is, okay, I knew nothing about Chronicles before, but I would say that elements of Chronicles are in Project Eradication, but not as weird and as non-CL as all of this is. But
I mean, I can totally see some relation between Project Eradication and the Green Phoenix. Because it's basically the plot of the Chronicles, is a terrorist organization wants to take over the supercomputer to basically take over the world. I don't know. I can't speak about Eradication. You haven't really told me a whole lot. I mean, I'm guessing. I'm going to guess that they're literally just doing their own thing. But they have their own supercomputer and their own replica, and they're just using their own tech, and the wars are trying to stop. I could be dead wrong about all of this. I know I'm staffed, but...
Those are things I can't answer on stream. Man, I haven't said anything about what Project Eradication, like the organization Eradication really is, but... I mean, there are things you can guess, but for the time being... you never know.
As Nightmare brought up, everything in this is just Carthage.
Oh yeah.
Tito is the Greek leader of Carthage.
Ooh.
Or was the leader.
I actually never got the Dido. I knew there were a lot of Carthage references, but I never really picked up on Dido.
There's a Hannibal of Carthage.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 Hannibals. Like, one of the Gregory's dogs is Hannibal, and then there's Hannibal Mago.
So Hannibal Barca was a Carthaginian general. I'm gonna watch. There's like a Hopper or something of Carthage.
Can't believe
Hopper's from the show, so...
No, okay. Oh, Schaefer, maybe.
Schaefer is also from the show. That is from the original source material.
Okay. I don't know so what characters do we want to name check for Carthage?
I mean, we really only get Hannibal Mago, Gregory Nictopoulos, and then we have Hannibal and Scipio, his 2 dogs. And then there's Memory. But that's really... No, they mention like some random terrorist name. One of the soldiers. Oh yeah, I should ask. How do you guys feel about the explanation for why only children can go to Lyoko and not adults?
What? Oh, I think it's okay. I have to, again, like I said earlier, I think it only applies to your first time going to Lyoko, and then you can manually reprogram your virtual form, because Jeremy updates their outfits. They don't update their outfits by being like, we need new outfits.
Yeah, but remember,
being like, we need new outfits.
This is Chronicles. They don't ever get that update.
Oh, that's true.
I remember thinking it was kind of lame. I thought a better explanation would be that like adults literally just have more mass to them. There's more atoms to keep track of, more memories to keep track of. So it's just a matter of the adults take way more resources, and it's a little harder to transfer them and transfer them back. Whereas kids have less memories, they're smaller. That's a better explanation than this whole all adults are secretly traumatized, and when they go to Lyoko, they have to face their traumas firsthand, and they can get like PTSD from this.
Well,
like,
I would say it's.
I thought,
I'd say it's
I think that's pretty
realistic.
true. Aren't we all traumatized adults?
Well,
Aren't we?
yeah, you do. Well, I don't think it so much has to do with trauma as your understanding of the world is not naive.
Yeah.
So
it's just very cynical and depressing that like that's the reason why all adults are just, because they no longer have this childlike view of themselves or the world, that they can no longer go to Lyoko because they can't stand their true selves.
Well, let me put it this way: if we're gonna be like, if we want to canonize this your self-internalized perspective of your subconscious, not even your conscious state, your subconscious is what produces your Lyoko form. Why the fuck is Ulrich a samurai and not like a depressed glob of sadness?
Well, it's because he's unaware. He's not aware of how like grouchy he is.
Well, yeah, but it's your subconscious that dictates your Lyoko form, not your conscious state.
He might not even be aware of it on a Sorry.
His subconscious is guided by his love for Yumi, and samurais are Japanese. He's into Yumi, so he's into that. Plain and simple.
Jeremy, I do not have an Asian fetish. The bridge is gold.
We all.
I'm not a furry.
I mean, we all know.
I think your Michael Belpot sounds like fucking. Sounds like the abridged version.
It's literally just Jeremy's voice, just pitched way lower, because the Chronicles version of Michael Belpot does not at all align with the canon version of Michael Belpot, because the canon version is not blonde with glasses, who's basically an adult version of Jeremy. He's brown, no glasses, and as Jeremy said, he's not super bright. At least not as smart as Jeremy. Like, he's not stupid, but he's not, like, a genius either. So...
he's just a guy.
Things are good, was Noko.
We're talking about...
This is a bot.
Chronicles.
I knew I'd seen it before. I knew where that was going, but I was gonna, people can sound like bots once in a while. That second message, though,
I actually looked at that name and I'm like, my first thought is, oh, that's a bot. But then I saw the content, I'm like, oh, that's not. Oh, I guess that's not a bot.
I've seen it before. And then obviously I was waiting for the second message to be for sure, because people do sometimes sound like bots when they first join streams. Deleted messages. I want detailed. Thank you. Yeah, because
I often sound like bot.
Because hello, how are things? Yeah, that sounds pretty. Like, maybe I checked out your Twitch channel. Yeah,
even misspelled Twitch.
But then always nice to get notifications for a new stream. I'm like, this is a bot. Nobody talks about the notifications in that manner. Nobody does. Yeah, I see people being like, I enjoy your notifications because, if you put something funny for your notifications or something. But no, not always nice to get the notification for a new stream. No, nobody.
Like Chronicles Readthrough Continues.
Like and then obviously I'm going to design a cool overlay for your channel. You fuck off. No. How is this overlay is cool enough? Yeah, it's not fancy. It doesn't have any animations. We don't need animations.
I like this overlay, so.
Yeah, this overlay is good.
Oh, also, I meant to start the stream. I meant to start the pre-stream 5 minutes early, and then at 4 on the dot, I was gonna play that audio clip you got last night, Flower.
Oh yeah, the frickin' the it's Tuesday. No, you're not dreaming, at least not anymore. I did my best, but it's not the best, the cleanest take of that line. Just because there's just some parts where I just could not live. I couldn't. You know what I mean. I actually did, because that whole radio thing gets... I should just post it in the public chat so people know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Just why not? Oh.
You know, actually,
I can
Dark
see what you
Xana.
did. You jumped through the different iterations of it being played in the show.
Yeah.
And clipped it together.
Essentially.
I'd send that over. I'd send over all the stuff to Max Out, because Max Out could probably piece it together and make it sound really good.
He'd probably be a little better at it. I was just trying to make it quick for like a quick little joke. Which is why I'm just like, yeah, this is rough, but whatever.
So you're telling me you don't use that as an alarm clock, Flower? /
No.
Can't believe it.
Really, I think the best way is to get someone who sounds like that radio announcer guy and just read the whole thing, and then you'd have a perfectly clean take.
Yeah, and then you dub the music underneath. Alrighty, guys. Time to meet up. Last 2 chapters. Ah, yes. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go get Karma off of. I'm gonna go get Karma for this. Unless you want to go post it to r/copypasta's Flower.
Copy pasta? Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Everyone mute up though, because I'll start the read through.
Chapter 10 Voyage to the Center of the First. Chapter 11 Friends Don't Forget Each Other. In the mirror, Dido was much younger than Alita knew her to be during the video conference. The same thing could be said of Professor Hertz, or rather Major Steinbeck. "Tell me where the supercomputer that you have constructed is located," said Dido, seated at a small bar table, "and let me destroy it. I will erase your mind of certain confidential information, only the most dangerous details, and then leave you to live in peace. You two as well as Alita. I'm offering you salvation." Hertz responded that this was out of the question, and Dido resumed her speech. "Be smart about this. You know to what extent I can be dangerous." At that moment, the control box hit Alita right in the head and rolled across the floor, stopping not far from her. The girl picked it up. "According to the computer," Jeremy's voice immediately sounded, "you've just made contact with the mirror's navigation interface. It's telling me that it's an interaction system that allows you to practically touch and use objects along your way. But most importantly, using it, you can move from one place to another in your father's journal, or rather, from one moment to another." Alita paused to think. She had materialized on a road that led to the old factory, just as Yumi and Odd had, and she now looked how she usually did on Lyoko, like a pointy-eared elf dressed in a short pink shirt and soft leather boots of the same color. The girl had run into Professor Hertz while walking down the road and had followed her to the cafe, where she had then heard her conversation with Dido, and now the control box. Gripping it hard in her right fist, Alita left the cafe and breathed in the fresh morning air. This virtual world was so perfect. She could sense the smells and the light touch of the wind against her skin. She hadn't even felt the slightest bit of vertigo that always resulted from virtualization. "Yumi and I are at the end of the mirror, correct?" she asked Jeremy. "Yes," he immediately replied. So if I continuously press the forward button on this control, sooner or later I'll get to them." She didn't wait to hear her friend's response. There was no doubt that her idea was right. She pressed the button on the box and the sky rained down on her head. Thousands of drops of light blue fell on her like hot wax. Buildings began to darken. Windows on an apartment block stretched downwards, drawing a series of obscure lines in the concrete facade. Streetlights bowed, bending towards the ground before turning into puddles that spread across the bitumen. It took but a few seconds for this calm city to change into a very different place, a place that Alita knew all too well, the third underground floor of the factory. "I did it!" she exclaimed enthusiastically. "I'm in the factory! I found them!" "Sorry, but no," Jeremy fumbled. "Look at the screen in the box." Alita did as he said. The screen read 1st of June, 1994, and the time. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. "The mirror encompasses several different days," Jeremy observed. "Although you're in the factory, Yumi and Odd aren't with you. Because you're in a different moment. I can't tell you when it is exactly, but I suppose the mirror ends at a moment on the 6th of June, the day when you went to the Yoko with your father. Aelita nodded silently. She suddenly noticed a familiar shadow obscured by the large cylinder of the supercomputer, but she briskly turned away so as not to see it. If her father was there, she didn't want to see him. She didn't feel ready. Deep down, it was nothing but a recording, and her top priority was to find her friends. She pressed the button on the box a second time, and again and again. The waxy rain transformed into a tempest of colors that coated her elf clothes. The world surrounding Aelita was changing at a vertiginous rate. The factory, the attic, and the hermitage living room, images of her father appearing for a moment before evaporating in the blink of an eye like a ghost. Aelita closed her eyes while continuing to hammer the button with her thumb. "Stop," Jeremy said. "You're there. It's the end of the mirror." Aelita once again found herself on the 3rd underground floor of the factory. But this time, nobody was there. The resulting silence was almost surreal. Yumi and Odd were on the 2nd floor, the scanner room, and to get to them, Aelita had to use the lift. She readied herself to confront Xana. The park in the First City was surrounded by a tall metallic grid which currently had no opening, but Xana simply had to wave a hand in front of him to twist the bars to the sides, creating a hole large enough for him to pass through effortlessly. The young man entered without even looking around. Org counted to 10 in his head and followed them inside. He found himself in a dense grove composed of blue trees with thin trunks, twisted branches, and thorns all over. They were a luminous, almost resplendent color, unnatural in every way. Org brushed one of them with his hand and immediately drew back, suppressing a whimper. A deep cut had opened in his hand, already beginning to bleed. These trees were sharp. This world is one of the most dangerous ones, he thought to himself. He had already realized this when he had come here with Yumi during using the equipment in Brussels, but at that time he had used the automated gloves and the helmets to connect to the virtual reality, rather than actually going there. He had to stay alert now. He prudently moved forward, head low and following the dull sound of Xana's footsteps in front of him, until he heard a voice. "Children, at last! I've been waiting so long for children to come here." Ulrich held his breath. Xana had just found the ghost of Franz Hopper. The boy closed the gap between Xana and himself as fast as he could and hid behind a shrub of pointed crystals that seemed to be made of pieces of broken bottles all fused together. The professor walked on air, his feet a few centimeters above the ground. He then stopped. His usual lab coat was open and he was wearing glasses and had a long beard, but Ulrich could see through his body, as if he were nothing but a cloud of colored vapor. "Is that really you, Professor?" Xana asked him, standing in front of the man. "I've waited here for years, since I've discovered that the First City could be turned into a weapon." Hopper had not responded to him. He was nothing but a recording, exactly like the ones in the journal in the mirror. Ulrich saw Xana clench his fists. He acted swiftly, throwing 2 punches at the man, but the boy's hands went straight through him without doing him any harm. Hopper's image trembled, but he continued to speak. "Obviously, I'm not here with you, unfortunately, but maybe I can help you now, and you can also help me. Follow me." The ghost began to retreat between the trees, but Xana didn't move an inch. Instead, he began to speak loudly. "Ulrich, come out of there," he said. "Makes me nervous to have you prowling around behind me like a little dog." Oh no, he'd been spotted. Ulrich rose from behind the bush and lightly flexed his knees, ready to escape into the trees if need be. Xana might actually be quicker than him, but it was worth a shot. You left Eva back there?" the young man asked him. "Yes." "I promise that she will be fine for now. Let's get going. I don't want to lose sight of Hopper. You can keep me company." Xana simply began to walk in the direction the ghost had gone. After a second of stupor, Org decided to follow him. Keep him company? This Xana was far different to the emotionless monster he and the rest of the group had fought on the Yoko. Maybe his rebirth had changed him, made him more human, but Org hadn't the least intention of letting his guard down. The metallic doors of the elevator slid aside, but Aelita remained rooted to the spot. The scanner columns were in front of her. She saw Yumi and Odd and that other boy with long black hair. She finally recognized him. "Aelita!" Jeremy's voice spurted into her ear, communicating from reality. "Our friends are fighting Xana, but don't worry, now I've managed to re-establish contact. I can get you out of there in no time." "Wait," she responded. Now that she could see Xana in person, she was sure that he seemed very familiar to her. The shape of his eyes, his nose, his shoulders. He brought to mind an old friend. Was she going crazy? Yumi and Odd stood, smiling timidly. "You didn't have to come," Yumi told her. "This is all my fault," Odd commented, looking at her sadly. "Eva Skinner is Xana, and I didn't even realize." All of a sudden, Alita's ears were filled with voices. In reality, Jeremy, Professor Hertz, and the others' parents had begun to argue. "Eva is Xana? But Ulrich is with her in the First City. We have to help him." Aelita remained immobile. It was so strange. Xana was there in the mirror, but at the same time he was inside Eva Skinner in the other virtual world. The young man with dark hair bowed in greeting. Don't worry, Ulrich and Eva are fine, although they cannot leave the first city. I blocked the connection to the Hermitage scanner. You? I wanted to see you. Why? Alita asked. Xana's eyes were riveted on her. He completely ignored Yumi and Odd, who were retreating little by little towards their friend. This monster in the body of a boy was concentrating on Alita, and he smiled. You must remember me. I don't want to talk about when I controlled the Yoko, but how I was in the beginning, when I adopted the form of a small boy, and you and I spent all our afternoons together. Together? She echoed, unsteady. There was something in the beginning? Alita remembered Xana's monsters attacking her. She remembered the tower she had to enter to stop the mad artificial intelligence from destroying the world. And she remembered her father, who had given his life to destroy Xana. He had killed him. She was talking to her father's assassin. She could not forget that for a single second. Yes, the young man exclaimed. You came to see me every day in the first city. We always played together. You were my first, my only friend, up until the day when your father decided that I was dangerous, that I could lose control, and he forced you to never come see me again. I don't remember any of that, Alita admitted, confused. Guys, Jeremy's voice sounded in her ear again. This monster is right. I can't get in contact with the first city, but I am connected to you, so I'm going to materialize you back into reality right away. It's too dangerous to stay there. Got it, boss, Odd whispered. Alita, on the other hand, made a negative gesture with her head. You go. I want to stay here. Have you gone crazy? Yumi asked, full of concern and gripping her arm. This guy is Xana. He could hurt you. He could even... If he's right, Alita interrupted. If at one time we were friends, then I want to stay here and get a better understanding of everything. Friends don't forget each other. If I did, I need to know why. With these words, Xana smiled again. Alita should have hated him. He murdered her father. It was his fault that she was all alone. But this boy had a shy look, as if he were a little scared. Alita felt that she needed to let her instincts guide her. Xana stretched out one arm with a closed fist and then raised his index finger. The finger began to lengthen and seemed to become thinner as well. The nail grew darker and the finger continued to grow larger and thinner, while becoming an intense green color, and then the upper part became a rosebud, opening into a red rose. Murmured Yumi from behind her. Flowers. Never trust a man who gives you flowers. He's surely done something wrong. Alita didn't really pay attention to her friend. You can leave, she repeated. Jeremy, materialize them into reality. She raised her voice to add her final word. I'm staying here. Are you sure? Alita nodded silently, eyes glued to the strange boy whose finger had just blossomed. If that's what you want. When she turned around, Odd and Yumi had disappeared. She was alone in the mirror, alone with Xana. The parents of the two teens who had just come out of the mirror threw themselves onto their children, embracing and kissing them. I'm fine, Daddy, I'm fine, Yumi said, trying to pry herself away from him. Mom, please be careful. You're going to mess up my hair, Odd implored. But they laughed. They weren't expecting to see their parents there in the Hermitage, and they didn't understand how they could know all about Lyoko, Professor Hopper, and their adventures. Jeremy sighed and shifted his gaze away from them to concentrate on the computer once more. He had lost contact with Ulrich, and now with Alita, too. The scanner was only transmitting electrostatic discharges now, and he wasn't receiving any audio or video signal. Xana had left him completely isolated. He felt paradoxically trapped in the real world. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned, meeting Richard's bright eyes and shy smile. You're worried about her, aren't you? Jeremy nodded. So am I, but we need to trust Alita. She's always been very empathetic. You know what I mean? She manages to put herself in other people's shoes, to understand them and be by their side. Xana's not a person, Jeremy grumbled. It's a computer program. That may be so, Richard consented. Or maybe there's something we still don't know, and that she managed to sense somehow. She made her decision, and we need to respect that for now. You'll see, everything will be fun in the end. Jeremy felt all his fatigue weigh down on him in one go. It had been a very long day, what with their parents' arrival at Caddick, bringing their memories back, repairing the scanner, and now this. Their arch-enemy, Xana, was back. There were even two of them. It was really too much for just one day, and he felt his hands tremble against the keyboard. And what do we do now? We need to go back to the school, Professor Hertz responded. I'll talk to the principal about preparing some rooms for our guests. Oh, there's no need, Akiko Ishiyama immediately intervened. Our house is right nearby, and we have more than enough room for everyone. All right, then, the professor nodded. The Jammy and Odd need to come back to school with me. Principal Dalmas is nervous enough after they skipped classes yesterday and today. And now, the icing on the cake. I have to explain Eva, Ulrich, and Alita's disappearances to him. Odd nervously tapped his fingers together a few times, enthused. He had been thinking of sleeping with his mother and father, like he had when he was younger. and Jeremy rejoiced at the idea of returning to the school and burying himself under the sheets in his own room. He was dying of sleep deprivation. He didn't yet know that this night he would barely get any sleep at all. Chapter 12. Memory's True Identity. Professor Hopper was floating in the air several steps away from them. We're here. The road that Auric and Xana were on was the color of rubies and crossed the sky of the first city like a large wind-blown scarf, without the need of columns or any support to hold it up. At a certain point, the road veered jarringly to the left, and it was only upon reaching the end of the turn that Auric noticed the presence of the castle that a moment earlier had been hidden by the blue skyscrapers that were sprung up all around like crystal fingers. The castle stood at the very center of the first city. It was a black building in the form of a hexagon, its upper levels finished off with ore and stone gargoyles. It had neither doors nor windows of any sort, as if the fortress had been carved out of a single block of stone. Auric clenched his teeth and jumped down from the road in the air. It was a 10-meter drop, but the young man landed on all fours without the slightest of harm. This was one of the advantages of the virtual world. Wow, he exclaimed. A short distance away, there was another golden ribbon road that rose above the ground and led to the castle, encircling it twice only to disappear somewhere over the horizon. Xana arrived beside Auric without even needing to jump, levitating gracefully over to the boy. He gestured to him, and they started to travel down the golden path together, approaching the imposing castle. Auric didn't think he had ever seen such an intense black before. It absorbed all the light around it, storing it in its opaque interior. Hopper materialized in front of him and pointed to a concrete point somewhere underneath him. "Look," he said. Corresponding to each peak of the hexagon, 6 rows of black bricks covered the ground of the city, forming 6 straight lines that became lost through the towers and streets, dividing them apart like architectural scissors. From above, the castle must seem like the black center of a giant star. "You must pay close attention, children," Hopper continued. "This castle is a weapon. I built it with the men in black, and neither Anthea nor I were able to do anything to prevent it." Auric realized that the professor wasn't really looking at them. His eyes bored into space. He remembered that this wasn't really Alita's father, only an extremely sophisticated computer program. "I wanted to deactivate the castle and render it harmless. I hoped that this way, the first city could transform into a gift for humanity instead of an instrument of destruction. Unfortunately, I committed an error. While I was fleeing from the men in black, I needed to reconstruct the city to be able to continue my research, but with it, I also needed to reconstruct the castle. This is when I understood that deactivating it wouldn't be possible." Hopper stopped and gave a sigh before continuing. "That is why I have decided to isolate it in a sandbox, forever enclosing the city in a place where it can cause no damage, and I built Lyoko. Lyoko was built as a barrier world capable of blocking the harmful effects of the castle while leaving intact its beneficial powers. But in order for my plan to be realized, I needed an ally, someone capable of controlling Lyoko and the first city. I needed a guardian." "A guardian?" whispered Ulrich. "Yes," said the young black-haired man opposite him with a smile. "Me." "The guardian," Hopper continued, "must be a very sophisticated artificial intelligence. I named him Xana, and to teach him to be human, I let he and my daughter, Alita, become friends." Odd yawned and rolled over. He tried to put his head under his pillow and count sheep, but nothing could be done about it, so he gave up and switched on the lamp on his nightstand. He looked at the alarm clock. It was barely 3 in the morning. The young man couldn't stay calm. Too many thoughts kept rolling about in his mind like a caged tornado. After their return to the real world, the others got them up to date on the situation, and it was a real mess. All of their parents had been collaborators with Hopper. And Walter Stern. He was nothing but a traitor. Poor Ulrich. That must be difficult for his friend to take in. Another thing that kept him from sleeping was the memory of his father that he had found in the memory card, the video of Aelita's mother, kidnapped and gagged. Before heading to bed, Odd had talked with Jeremy a bit about it, but his friend was so exhausted that he might not have even heard him. And what's more, he had another thought, one that covered all the rest like a black veil. Eva Skinner. For the first time in his life, Odd felt ready to have a girlfriend and to dedicate himself solely to her. And then, what did he discover? That Eva wasn't a real person, but Xana, his enemy. Odd had fallen in love with a computer program, and an evil program to make things worse. "That's it!" he cried, and this time he pulled out his sheets with a kick and stood up. With Ulrich shut in the first city, his room felt empty and sad, and Odd needed to speak with someone, with a real friend. He reached for his phone and turned it on. Then he waited several seconds for the old device to get going and tried to call Jeremy. His phone was off. "Well, you won't escape me," he commented enthusiastically. "You're going to keep me company, even if I have to kick your door down. Even if I have to kick down your door." Odd let out a small laugh and put on a large jacket over his pajamas. It had already been several long minutes since he knocked on Jeremy's door, but his friend hadn't come to open it. He must be in a deep sleep. For a moment, Odd thought he'd leave him be. After all, it was late and Jeremy might need some sleep. Then his attention was caught by the doorknob. There was something strange about the lock. It was scratched, and the metal was bent towards the outside. Has someone broken in? The idea hadn't yet formally formed in his head, and so Odd was already turning the knob. He heard the lock protest with a quiet creak. He clenched his teeth and pushed the door with his shoulder. The lock suddenly gave way, causing the young man to fall flat on his face once in the room. Jeremy's room was pitch black. The light from the hall filtered inside, forming a bright triangle that spread across the floor all the way to his friend's empty and unmade bed. The sheets and covers were rolled up in a ball as if they had been shoved away with a kick. Where could Jeremy have gone at this time of night? And why were there those marks on the lock? He found the light switch on the wall and turned on the light, closing the door behind him. This was good old Jeremy's room, all right. Perfectly in order except for his desk, which was completely covered in computers and other machines. Hanging on the wall just above the bed was this poster of Einstein sticking his tongue out of the camera. And on the other side of the room was his closet. Odd approached the desk, but he didn't see anything strange. He turned around, then realized that there was a note tacked to the back of the door. The young man snatched it up immediately. The tack popped out and fell to the ground with a ting as Odd's eyes opened wide. It was a simple business card with a drawing of a strange bird and the words Green Phoenix printed on it in very historical typography. On the reverse side, someone had written in a very legible manner, "The friend is now with us." The Green Phoenix had kidnapped Jeremy. Jeremy was immobilized. The young man with the sharp face had broken into his room without making the slightest bit of noise and taken him without giving him time to react. A true professional. Jeremy then realized who he was facing. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, Grigory Nictopoulos, the man with the dogs who had used the memory-snatching machine on Robert De La Robbie and the Ishiyamas. The young man had been taken out in 2 seconds. He smelled a strange odor climb into his nose, and he lost consciousness. Upon awakening, he found himself paralyzed. His arms were tied behind his back, and his legs bent behind him with his heels sticking into his back. He couldn't see anything either. Someone had taken away his glasses, and his head was in a black canvas bag that restricted his breathing. His head hurt. His mouth was sealed by something that tasted like plastic. Adhesive tape, he thought, and his ankles and wrists had been bound up tightly in such a way as to cause him a lot of pain each time he tried to move. Jeremy tried to remain calm. How much time had gone by since he was taken? Think, he said to himself. When Gregory arrived, he had just gone to sleep and he hadn't felt the need to drink or go to the bathroom, so it could only have been several hours maximum that he was unconscious. It was probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Odd and the others wouldn't notice his absence until the following morning. He couldn't hope for an immediate rescue. Furthermore, how could they rescue him? Gregory was armed and dangerous, and his friends. "The kid's awake," came a catty, masculine voice. Jeremy felt a pair of hands grab him, and he tried to get away from them and cry out, but he wasn't able to. Someone slightly lifted the sack from his head, and a hand entered holding a tissue soaked with a substance that flooded his nostrils. Jeremy swallowed the spit. He shouldn't breathe it in. His struggle only lasted a few moments. Then he felt his head become heavier and heavier before he passed out again. Principal Dalmas's uncombed gray beard and his puffy eyes fit those of someone who had too little sleep. Professor Hertz also seemed exhausted. Odd shivered under his jacket. He was still wearing his pajamas underneath, and his bare feet were frozen. "What are you going to do?" he asked the adults. Immediately after having discovered the note, the young man went to fill in the professor, and then they went together to call the principal. They still hadn't informed Jeremy's father and the others. It was more important to trace out a good plan first. "We have to call the police," Dalmas spoke decisively. "Or better, Dido," Odd quickly contradicted him. Jeremy had told him everything that happened during the time he was in the mirror, as well as their alliance with the boss of the Men in Black. "Dido," said the principal, raising an eyebrow. "And just who is this Dido?" Spoke the professor while throwing a deadly look Odd's way. But the young man didn't let that intimidate him. Jeremy had been kidnapped. This wasn't a good time to worry about formalities. "Dido is a secret agent," he explained. "She manages a government agency." He tried to summarize the situation as best he could, remembering what Jeremy had told him. Hertz sighed with resignation and helped him to explain everything to the principal. At the end of the story, there was a long moment of silence. Delma sprung his hands together nervously, then gave an audible sigh. "Professor, is this all true?" "Yes," Hertz replied to him, holding his gaze. "Some of my students are involved in an international plot, and there is a supercomputer that is also a deadly weapon, and you are allied with a secret agency to fight against an army of terrorists." "Correct!" nodded I with enthusiasm. "And you haven't told me anything until they've now kidnapped one of the students?" I started to get the feeling that the principal wasn't totally happy with the situation, and he bit his lip. You shouldn't worry about it, Mr. Dalmas, he said, trying to smile. Jeremy's a smart kid, and he can take care of himself. The same goes for Alita and Ulrich and Eva. I know this all seems rather, well, desperate, but you'll see. We'll get through it. Maybe, murmured Dalmas acceptingly. At this point, it seems useless to me to call the police. Professor Hertz, call this Dido and ask her what we can do. In the meantime, I'll get in contact with the children's parents and tell them to come here immediately. I tried to think what Jeremy would say in his place. What ideas would he have? That won't be enough, Mr. Dalmas, he said, standing up. You also need to think about the other students. Keddick is now in danger. You have to wake them all up and have them prepared to defend the school. The principal and the professor looked at him stupefied. Jeremy opened his eyelids. He was still tied up at the feet and hands, but he was no longer laid out on his stomach on the ground, but sat up on a wooden chair with armrests and a rotating seat. Someone had removed the adhesive tape over his mouth, and his head was no longer covered, although it didn't make a big difference considering that he was still without his glasses. The young man found himself in a very small room that smelled of dust and was largely occupied by a wide desk. It was so close to him that the edge of the table pushed into his knees, and a large metal filing cabinet that sat to his right. In front of him was a door, and to the left a window through which an icy breeze and fine blue light entered. It was surely almost daybreak. Even without being able to distinguish the details of the place, Jeremy quickly understood where he was, in the director's office in the old factory that was situated in the middle of the river. The same factory that housed Lyoko's supercomputer, and which, for the time being, was being occupied by the soldiers of the Green Phoenix. He smiled. In a sense, Alita and Ulrich were there, close to him, virtualized in the sandboxes of the supercomputer. He hoped that they would be okay and that they were doing well to keep out of Xana's clutches. I need to get out of here, thought Jeremy, and as quick as possible. He tried to move. Someone had placed his arms behind his back, and they were attached to his ankles with plastic cords or something of the sort. His feet were pressed against the pivoting base of the chair, but each movement that he made with them echoed to his wrists, causing him to painfully jolt. He clenched his teeth and tried to turn around using his back. The chair moved slightly. He continued in the opposite direction with more force and found his elbow pressed against the desk. Now he could bend his arm, and he could maybe manage to tilt the chair and cause it to fall to the ground. From there, with a bit of luck... The office door opened, and Jeremy stopped moving, slowly turning his head towards the person who came in and moved their hand about the wall looking for the light switch. After hearing the click, he had to shut his eyes as they had adjusted to the darkness. This unknown person closed the door behind her and approached him. They didn't give you back your glasses yet, did they? Here. It was a woman, and she had a friendly voice. Jeremy felt delicate fingers place the frame of his glasses correctly on his nose. The woman then sat on the desk several centimeters from him, with her legs crossed. She must be at least 50 years old. She was red-headed, and her face was clean, without any type of makeup. She was wearing jeans and a shirt, and a lab coat over top with a screwdriver sticking out of the pocket. I'm Memory. What's your name? Jeremy, he replied, even though this wasn't much of a question. If they had kidnapped him, they had to know without a doubt who he was. Don't be scared, Jeremy. Everything will be okay. We need you, but I'm sure that you'll help us, and afterwards you can go back to the school. I don't have the slightest intention of helping a bunch of terrorists, Jeremy spat out, looking at her fixedly. Please, Memory's voice seemed upset. Think before you act, and don't be careless. My boss, Hannibal Mago, well, let's just say that sometimes he can be somewhat impulsive. Hannibal Mago, the head of Green Phoenix. Suddenly, Jeremy felt dizzy. I came here, the woman continued, to bring you to him and warn you that you need to be careful. I wouldn't want something to happen to you. She seemed sincere, but Jeremy's heart continued to race. Hannibal Mago, and he was on the verge of meeting him. Memory stood up and took out a utility knife from her coat. While she moved around, the neck of her shirt opened slightly, and Jeremy's eyes caught sight of something around the woman's neck. Memory was wearing a delicate golden chain, but it was the end of the necklace that caught the young boy's attention. It was round and as large as an old coin, and 2 letters were engraved on it, a W and an A, surrounded by a sailor's knot. Jeremy knew this necklace well, because Alita had one exactly like it. Her father had left it for her before he disappeared, and Alita's hair was a magnificent fire-red color, just like Anthea's, her mother, just like Memory's.
Bum 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 bum. Shock.
Bruh.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Bruh.
The only other fiery redheaded character in the entire books.
Just Chronicles, you never cease to
Amaze us? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely.
Just
Oh,
incredible. Stellar.
brilliant.
This is everything I dream. Project Eradication.
You know, I don't know why they were like didn't realize that. No, they were totally gonna be targets for Green Phoenix. Like, what? How little they decide to pay attention to Green Phoenix once they realize what's going on is.
You just thought that we'd with a terrorist organization and would be perfectly safe
in our dorm rooms where we know they were watching us. Like,
yeah,
just what? Why aren't not everyone's not gonna stay at the Hermitage, like camp in the basement and shit, and have people do guard watches? Like, no, what? Are you serious? They were asking for it.
They didn't know that the Green Phoenix was watching them in the dorms. I don't think anyone really knew that. They knew someone was probably watching the Hermitage, but so the Hermitage might have actually been compromised already. But they didn't know the school was also compromised.
That's fair. But,
look at me defending Chronicles.
Betraying us all.
Oh no. Like I said, Chronicles can be very interesting at times and can be very frustrating at times.
You're just like Walter, a traitor.
Walter Stern. I don't know if George is still in the Twitch chat, but he missed it, man. The whole apology with Mr. Stern.
we gotta get George to read it. It would be perfect.
Oh yeah.
And we could get you to do your Auric lines at the same time. It'd be odd.
Hey.
AB. Just.
But nah.
Oh, perfection.
Nah. I think we're missing the most important part of this section of chapters. Our man, the Chad, Mr. Delmos, is now technically a Leoka warrior.
Yeah,
and
why is Chronicles like everybody's a Leoka warrior now?
It's miraculous. It's miraculous.
Everybody's here except like half of everybody else. But I still think it's like really stupid how little they cared about. Like, they let themselves get separated way too much. Like, Jeremy waiting alone in the hall. I swore Jeremy was going to get kidnapped in the science building when he was waiting for Mrs. Hertz and his dad. Because they had just done the part where, like, oh, yeah, no, we need to kidnap that Jeremy kid.
Yeah.
He'll help
us. They just jumped to and then
And then there's also like he expects Jeremy to just go along with them. Like, what makes you think that?
They have material over him. I don't want to spoil it, but they do blackmail him.
Build me terrorist weapons. No. Oh man, you got me there. I wasn't really sure what to do after that part.
Build me terrorist weapons, or I'll kill Anthea. Frickin', I spoiled it, whatever. That's basically what happens.
I'll kill Anthea, really?
Yep.
You know what? Alita never saw her alive. Do it.
Does
Jeremy coward?
reveal that he has a stake in Anthea being alive, or is it just all the surveillance they know?
No, Jeremy. Basically, when Jeremy saw Anthea, that scene's supposed to imply that he figured it out. And he basically says, yeah, I figured out memories in Thea. He's like, oh, cool, you get it. So, do what we say, or Alita will lose her mom.
Wow. So, oh, Jeremy, you're not the. That's actually pretty in character for Jeremy, I would say.
What I'm saying,
being exceptionally smart, but also fucking it up anyways.
Nah. I'm still saying a better route would be for him to say, like, you know what? Alita never saw her alive. Do it. Do it, coward. I want to see you do it.
Yeah.
The problem I have with that is that Anthea's really the only one that can work the supercomputer, which they mentioned earlier. So, like, if they kill her off, and Jeremy's like, they lose their bait on, like, getting Jeremy to cooperate, and then they also.
They kill Jeremy.
You can't kill Jeremy. They can threaten to kill his friends.
Well, we're the only two who can operate the computer, so try me.
Do it. Do it, coward.
I would, Jeremy. Well, we're the only two who can operate the supercomputer, so try me. Mego pulls out the gun, just pops in.
Honestly,
you gonna help now? Well, I mean,
Mego really should have some scientists or something, like maybe some scientists who did like some questionable things and got blacklisted from more respectable businesses. Like, he really should. If he's supposed to be like this well-funded private army, like the books are implying, he should have more than just memory to work on, like, to work the supercomputer and figure stuff out.
You'd think, and yet here we are.
Well, I think the thing is everybody who would be able to do that got memory wiped because
or dead because
But Anthea got memory wiped, and she can still work the supercomputer. Like, she doesn't recognize it at all. Granted, she probably didn't build that particular supercomputer, but she did work on the first city. So
I'm like
the mechanics
it
of
could have
the
been selective
memory
wiping,
wipe.
though. Like, everyone on the
Yeah.
project, just I'm pretty sure hardcore got memory wiped on
I mean,
everything.
I think the
She
memory
might have been
wipes
soft wipe.
are just events. Like, they wipe events, not technical knowledge. So she understands how a supercomputer works and how virtual worlds work. She just doesn't remember specific events or people.
I suppose that's fair, but it's
That's
still,
probably right. I don't. I mean, yeah, you can't have a bright super genius and an evil villain.
I feel bad for saying this, Nick, but Hiroki doesn't really come into play until the freaking epilogue. So he doesn't help
Who?
Hiroki.
I
Because
know, I
Nick
was
said
kidding.
Hiroki's now
But-
the Yoko warrior. But yeah, like, Hiroki's in the second book because he's like, oh, I'll take care of Kiwi. And then he's like, oh no, my parents got, like, this strange man came in my house and did something to my parents. And then after that, he's just kind of gone from the story until the very, very end. There's just one line. It's just like, oh yeah, he's not fighting with his sister anymore. And that's it.
So everybody,
I'm
let me get this
sorry,
straight.
Yumi. Is that
Everybody,
like what he says? Is that it? Is that it? That's all.
It's not even dialogue. It's literally just, they're not fighting anymore.
wow,
Brilliant.
10 out of 10.
Everybody's
Nah, but yeah, my question is so basically the entire Ishiyama family has this huge secret about like military operations and all of this, and Hiroki knows nothing. Absolutely nothing. They never tell him. Or maybe one day they
Yumi,
or maybe one day,
Akiko, and Takeo are gonna carry it to their graves.
yeah, one day they cut.
Hiroki will be at his parents' funeral because they both just passed away at the same time for some weird reasons.
Okay.
That would be the least coincidental thing that's happened in
Yeah.
And then Hiroki at the funeral is like, okay, Yumi, they're dead now. Tell me.
Damn.
Yumi will be like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, Hiroki.
You know what? If this was more in line with the show, Hiroki would totally be like, what the frick is going on? And totally sneak in and be where he really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But no.
Well, yeah,
I know there's
maybe-
this big scene coming up, and the more I think about it, the more I think it's a lost opportunity. But I'll get into that when we read it tomorrow.
I mean,
I already spoiled today, but I'm like, I literally know that what I just said is going to happen next chapter. So
also, why? Like, I get they know Jeremy can work the computer and stuff, but why do they think he's like? Why don't they just? They know kids can get virtualized. Why not just kidnap some random kid?
Yo, get in.
Or are you telling me that all of your private military guys, none of them have kids?
maybe the thought process. Sorry.
You think they'd use their own children? Nah, kidnap another kid.
Yeah, you have a point, but I think the thing is Jeremy's smart. Like, another kid would probably just be freaking the frick out while Jeremy remains composed. So
True.
maybe that's why. because they're like, oh, he's easier to work with.
I mean,
rather than just
they
like
could convince the
imagine.
kid it's like some really cool video game, and then obviously all of the things the kid has to do are his goals, are things that he needs to do to beat the game.
That implies that Hannibal Mago is versed enough in video game culture and what the kids are into these days. And I don't think he's that savvy.
Give a
How do you
random
do,
kid
fellow
$20 to go to the first city for him. Hey, you, yeah. Hey, I got Chris $20 bill if you want to come try out my video game.
He's rich. He could probably offer like $200.
Yeah, but it's a kid. To a kid, $20 is $200. Do you have any idea how much candy they can buy with that? Actually, not that much. Candy's not very cheap these days, sadly.
You could buy a good amount of candy with $20.
It's just not as much as you used to.
It's not like penny candy.
Banana.
Back when I was a kid, you
could literally get a bag of candy for
candy for $1.
How do you do, fellow kids?
How do you do? Just imagine Hannibal Mago dressed up in his crazy, fancy, like Arab style with the fancy hat and the suit, and he just shows up to the crowd and just like, "Hey kid, hey kid, do you want? I will give you $20 if you go to the first city and then break the barrier so I can rule the world."
The other thing. Well, here's the other thing too. Why does he think to kidnap Jeremy, the smart kid, and not any of Jeremy's friends who probably also have gone to Lyoko and
Gregory came up with it. I don't. Again, I think it's just because they think Jeremy being smart will help them get into the first city. Somehow, you're right. Maybe they just thought Jeremy would be easier to capture because the other warriors can actually fight and Jeremy can't.
Yeah, but that also implies Jeremy hasn't been to Lyoko, in which case he might be like the worst candidate.
They don't know that.
I roll with it. George is here now. Was he here earlier though? That's the question.
George, we're gonna have to give you a Chronicles piece of dialogue for you to read for Mr. Stern.
Yep. That is your fate, George. He was here earlier. Yeah, but was he here when we went through that line is the thing. Yeah, he just got okay. I mean not right now, but we'll probably do it maybe tomorrow or Sunday.
I mean, I'd be down to do it right this second if he's willing to hop in like right now. You can end the stream now. Let me actually pull up that dialogue. What was that in? Chapter? Anyone remember what chapter that was in?
I think it was one of these last two. No, it was one of the first two. I think.
Would it be? Hold on.
Looks like we're doing this. Here we go.
So would it be Soldiers in the Virtual World?
I think yes.
I have no idea.
I just dropped my phone.
Here, I'm gonna pause.
George, we're not doing it today.
I thought we were. I thought we were doing this now.
It won't take long. I don't know. He says I can do it now if you guys want.
Oh.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
I guess. Why not? You two want to do it right now. I can't stop you, can I?
I'm just looking for the dialogue.
Give them a VA show before the end of the stream. So, yeah.
So
hello.
Hello, George. So back to Carthage relevant characters. There is a Gregory, but he was a pope who was upset with a church in Carthage. So I don't think that counts because we're talking Punic Wars stuff. All right.
I'm copy pasting it into the chat.
So, is there anyone in Chronicles named Pyrrhus?
This? No. As
Shut
far as I know.
Okay, we got Hannibal. There's someone named Scipio, or they have a code name Scipio or something, right?
Whoa,
I remembered that.
Scipio?
Is there a Livy? Cincinnatus? No, there's not. Is there Cicero in Chronicles? Cato, Sulla, Tiberius, Gracchus. Is there a Mark? Is there a Mark in Chronicles?
Are
Oh,
all
hi,
these
Mom.
lines? Or is it a conversation? 'Cause
It's a conversation. So it's a conversation between Ulrich and Walter. So the book decided to call him Walter Stern instead of just
I would
Mr.
never-
Stern.
I like
would
it.
never-
I think Walter is a fitting
Okay.
name.
I would never
So son, then so it's back and forth. So it's every other line. Or
Actually, I'm actually building the dialogue right now.
thank you. So I'm gonna.
Quick, Cam, get OBS ready. You can record this for a
That's a good idea.
weird VA session. We could call it minute VA sessions
Uh,
We're at
or pocket
Nice.
VA sessions.
I got all the dialogue.
In the pockets of eradication.
oh my
Do
God.
you want to read like the normal text, or do you want to just skip it?
We'll skip it.
Okay.
actually, you know what? Yeah, hold on.
Hold on, Flower. You shouldn't have bolded your text.
But all the text,
Or you-
because can't. There's no way to color text in Discord. I can italicize it, I guess.
Or yeah, add another asterisk on either side, so yours is italicized, or so George's, so you both are exactly on what you need.
Yeah, so I know which ones I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
I'll more than likely I'll step on your feet a lot.
I'm fixing it.
Also,
Or just parentheses Ulrich next to all of your lines.
Wait, we can just use the stream for the. I can just grab the clip from the stream.
yeah.
I don't know because I don't have the stream VC. I don't have it set up on OBS. I have every other VC set up.
God damn it. Wait, oh, so it sees us. Oh, I see what you mean.
Okay, so how did the line? Oh, so yours are slanted. and
Yes,
mine
mine are slanted, and yours are just straight. You have more
It is back and
dialogue,
forth,
so
though. It is for the most part back and forth. So, you know.
Got this. I'm hyped.
you start.
Son,
Yes,
you're already up.
I'm hungry. It's past breakfast time.
I'm sorry
Why are you telling me you're sorry?
for what I did to you and your mother. I don't know if I've ever been a good father, and I'm sorry for that.
Come on. It's not that bad.
That's not true, but I want to tell you that I'm very angry at myself. I've played a very dangerous game, and I've lost everything. I had the opportunity to change my life after they erased my memory. Compensate in some way for what I have done. Instead of that, I continue to open the old wound of my errors. During all that time, I distanced you from me without listening or really talking to you. I was even close to losing your mother's love. But when I saw you in the Hermitage yesterday, I finally understood everything. I feel that change, and now I can make up for all the bad I have caused. Being with you and helping Aelita. What do you say? Are you willing to give me another chance?
We have a lot to work on, and it will be very dangerous. We're really going to need you to make it out of all of this.
And now, son, I give you my hand for a handshake.
Handshake! Handshake.
I love it.
Awkward
Great.
family handshake.
That was great. Nah. Both Ulrich and his dad. Ulrich's dad goes for the hug and Ulrich goes for the handshake. But then they both realize what's going on. So Ulrich then tries to go for the hug, and Ulrich's dad tries to go for the handshake. And it's awkward. They just give each other a good shoulder pat. That's how it goes.
It's like a Gravity Falls awkward sibling hug, pat.
Yes, that's it.
All right, George, it's official. You should be hired by Moonscoop.
Moonscoop hired this
man.
Thanks.
He's voice acting in a way that no one can.
I don't even know the full context of the situation, unless you've been keeping up with the streams.
I've been I kind of been busy with work, so I'll pop in now and then. I thought honestly for a minute you were reading Code Lyoko fanfics again.
I mean, this is Chronicles.
We don't do that on stream. We don't. Yeah, Chronicles is just a big old fanfic with a fancy approved by Moonscoop.
Oh, we've had that discussion too many times, but
I told you.
Told us what.
That was great. That was wonderful. I mean, you can probably go back and listen to my take of that, me trying to imitate Walter Stern.
I'll try.
Just sorrowfully, but you know, that was wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was trying to remember everything you guys told me, so I didn't like overdo it, and then also keep that voice because I don't want to lose it.
I think you were somber enough.
Yeah.
If anything, the every time you stuttered, aside from the compensate one, that one was just a mess. All the little stutters and whatnot kind of added to it.
Thank you.
I felt the depth, the emotion. I cried. I was muted, but I cried.
Wazy.
Wazy.
Are you being serious, or are you saying that in like the?
No, I'm not being serious. But
okay. I was like, oh god, I didn't. What have I done?
Yeah, you just moved me that much. I can't.
All right, well, Wazy, I hate to break it to you, man, but your sob fest is over because I'm done the stream.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, the read throughs go really long.
Yeah, they do.
There's only like an hour and 25 minutes of material. That added time was us talking about the material.
Because we can't talk about it as we watch the show. So all the talking over watching the show has just become talking after each reading session.
Count for that when I was like breaking up, like this is a good amount of chapters per stream because I've been aiming for like an hour 20.
I mean, next time we do a read through, I mean, I'll probably boost the volume a bit more so that we don't talk over it so hard. But next read through, we might just talk over a little bit more, because we'll have already done one. No, next read through. Yeah, we're gonna do another one of these in like a year and a half or something.
Okay, that's okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, not like right after this.
Yeah, we're gonna restart the book immediately once we're done this.
No, we're not.
We have a bot that just like turns on the stream and just plays these recordings over and over again. Mm-hmm. And when it gets to the end, it's like reruns on TV.
There are 24/7 channels that do that, where they just play they're basically a TV network on Twitch.
Yeah.
You could technically set up an account with all the fan readings and just have them on a loop 24/7.
Oh gosh, I don't think anybody.
Lyoko Chronicles, the audiobook. With visual read along.
Oh. Like on the one hand, we have Flowers, great voice acting, but on the other hand, it's Chronicles. You know, so it's like
I have my own mixed feelings about Chronicles, but I am trying to give it like justice. Like the way this is intended is how I'm gonna try and read it, even if I'm like internally just like reading over some of these decisions.
All right, but yep. Thank you everybody who joined us today. We will be back tomorrow at 4 what did 4 p.m. What does PM even stand for again?
Yeah, I thought you were about to say Pacific time. I was like, no. I don't know.
Oh god.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we will be back for post meridium.
Oh my god.
For the finale of book 3.
Woo!
Then we only have one more book to go. We'll be done before the end of the year.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Man.
Sad times.
Yeah, I was doing the math, and this is roughly like about 18 hours to like read the whole all the 4 books. That's not a lot.
So this is our 48th rewatch.
Whoa.
Not including Quest for Infinity and the rewatchathon marathon.
Okay.
If we include Quest for Infinity, that would be another. I think we spent 6 sessions on that.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, at least. Yeah.
We either spent 4 or 6 sessions, and then the rewatchathon marathon would be another one. So
we've come
we're
a long
already
way.
over 50. We're at like 55 or something, I think, for rewatch sessions in total.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost. So yeah, we just passed 7 months of rewatches.
Jeez. Was not. Yeah.
Can't believe it.
It's fun. All right, but thank you everybody who tuned in. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye forever.